Mais j'appelle, s'il vous plaît, Madame le greffier.
Monsieur le Sénateur Gorst.
Présent.
Monsieur le Sénateur Farnham.
Présent.
Madame le Sénateur Ferguson. Monsieur le Sénateur Lefondre.
Présent.
Madame le Sénateur Valois.
Présente.
Madame le Sénateur Moore.
Présente.
Monsieur le Sénateur Pallett.
Présent.
Monsieur le Sénateur Mezek.
Présent.
Monsieur le Connétable de Saint-Hélier.
Présent.
Monsieur le Connétable de Saint-Laurent.
Présent.
Madame le Connétable de Saint-Laurent.
Présente.
Madame le Connétable de Saint-Sauveur.
Présente.
Monsieur le Connétable de Saint-Brelade. Monsieur le Connétable de Greville. Monsieur le Connétable de Saint-Jean.
Présent.
Monsieur le Connétable de la Trinité.
Présent.
Monsieur le Connétable de Saint-Pierre. Monsieur le Connétable de Sainte-Marie.
Présent.
Monsieur le Connétable de Saint-Ouen.
Présent.
Madame le Connétable de Saint-Martin.
Présente.
Madame le Député Martin.
Présente.
Monsieur le Député Southern. Madame le Député de Greville.
Présente.
Monsieur le Député Lewis.
Présent.
Monsieur le Député Tadier. Monsieur le Député Higgins.
Présent.
Monsieur le Député Masson.
Présent.
Madame le Député Pinel.
Présente.
Monsieur le Député de Saint-Martin.
Présent.
Monsieur le Député de Saint-Ouen.
Présent.
Madame le Député Dublay.
Présente.
Monsieur le Député Labbé.
Présent.
Monsieur le Député Wickenden.
Présent.
Monsieur le Député de Sainte-Marie.
Présent.
Monsieur le Député Truscott.
Présent.
Monsieur le Député Young.
Présent.
Monsieur le Député Ash.
Présent.
Monsieur le Député Morel.
Présent.
Monsieur le Député Guida.
Présent.
Monsieur le Député de Saint-Pierre.
Présent.
Monsieur le Député de la Trinité.
Présent.
Monsieur le Député de Saint-Jean.
Présent.
Madame le Député de Hégara.
Présente.
Monsieur le Député Ayer.
Présent.
Madame le Député Pershard.
Présente.
Monsieur le Député Ward.
Présent.
Madame le Député Alves.
Présente.
Monsieur le Député Pamplin.
Présent.
Madame le Député Gardner.
Présente.
Monsieur le doyen.
Notre aide soit au nom de Dieu qui a fait les cieux et la terre. Amen. Seigneur Dieu, Père éternel et tout-puissant, qui a établi le gouvernement et les puissances de la terre, pour le règlement et pour la conduite du peuple, et qui nous a commandé d'avoir toujours pour but la gloire de ton saint nom. Nous te prions qu'il te plaise de donner à cette assemblée le don de conseil et de prudence, d'unir le cœur et les affections de tous ceux qui la composent, et de les conduire tellement toi-même par ton Saint-Esprit que toute leur délibération est en accompagnée de ta bénédiction. Réussisse au bien et au soulagement du peuple, qu'il te plût de commettre à leur soin. Car nous t'en prions au nom et par les mérites de ton Fils bien-aimé Jésus-Christ, notre Seigneur, qui nous a enseigné à t'invoquer en disant: Notre Père, qui es aux cieux, ton nom soit sanctifié, ton règne vienne, ta volonté soit faite dans la terre comme au ciel. Donne-nous aujourd'hui notre pain quotidien, et nous pardonne nos offenses, comme nous pardonnons à ceux qui nous ont offensés. Et ne nous envoie point en tentation, mais délivre-nous du mal. Car à toi la reine, la puissance et la gloire, au siècle des siècles. Amen.
Madame le Sénateur Ferguson.
Excusez.
Monsieur le Connétable de Saint-Brelade.
Présent.
Monsieur le Connétable de Gruville.
Présent.
Monsieur le Connétable de Saint-Pierre.
Présent.
Monsieur le Deputy Sutherland.
Présent.
Monsieur le Deputy Tadier.
Excusez.
L'Assemblée est énorme, Monsieur le Président.
Well, les états sont constitués. Very well. The first matter of this morning follows on from the appointment of Deputy Labby as Minister for Children and Housing, and that means there's a vacancy for the role of Chair of PPC. In accordance with Standing Order 118, I invite members to make nominations for this office.
Sir, it's Deputy Labby.
Deputy, yes, Deputy.
Sir, I take great pleasure in nominating my Vice Chairman on Privileges and Procedures, Deputy Alves, for the post. She'll be known to members because she's worked on a record number of policy development boards and across scrutiny panels, so I'm sure I don't need to tell members how what a fantastic asset she is to the Assembly, and she'd do a great job. Thank you, sir.
Very much. Is that nomination seconded?
Yes, sir.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
Other nominations? Senator Gorst?
Thank you, sir. Yes, I would like to nominate Constable Jackson of St Brelade's for the position of Chair of PPC. This is a very important role, taking over from the previous chair. It's a time when we are looking to deliver reform and change, and a number of those pieces of work need to be continued. And it is extremely important that balance and bringing the Assembly together remains a priority, but equally bringing the island together, which are skills that I think Constable of St Brelade's enjoys and will bring to the role, sir. Thank you.
Is that nomination seconded?
Yes, sir.
Are there any other nominations? Very well. Then, in accordance with Standing Order 1183, I will invite the candidates to speak and answer questions in the order in which they were nominated, and that, of course, will start with Deputy Alves. Candidates will speak for 10 minutes, and then members will have up to 20 minutes to ask them questions. Greffier will ring a bell when the candidate has been speaking for 10 minutes, signal that time is up, and when candidates have made their speeches and answered questions, we will take a recorded vote, and the candidate who receives more than half the votes cast will be appointed. Accordance with the normal rules, then when Deputy Alves is speaking and being questioned, the Connétable of St Brelade must not be present. Therefore, the position will be that the Connétable will be asked to leave the meeting and will be contacted by a member of the State's Gref and will be brought back into the meeting when the process dealing with Deputy Alves has been dealt with, and then the same will operate in reverse after that. So, Connétable of St Brelade, could I ask you please to leave the meeting?
I shall, sir.
Thank you very much. And I'll just wait for the Gref to confirm that we are in a position to continue. Obviously, because we're operating remotely, it takes a little bit of time, because not only has the Conotab to leave, but a member of the Statescref has to telephone and make contact with him at this point. So we will move on to deal with the speeches when we're certain that the rules have been observed. Yes, the protocol has been complied with accordingly. Deputy Alves, you may speak for 10 minutes, followed by 20 minutes of questions. The timer will start now and a bell will ring when your time is up. Deputy Alves.
Thank you, sir. Over the past 2.5 years, I have had the pleasure of working closely with Deputy Labby on PPC as his Vice Chair. I would like to congratulate him on his recent appointment and thank him for all the work he has done. Filling his space will be no easy feat, and I sincerely hope that with the Chief Minister's backing, he will be back on PPC to continue to support the good work that was started. Working on the subcommittee looking at implementing the EOM election observers recommendations has been the highlight of my work on PPC so far. Putting together various proposals to bring forward for a more equitable electoral districts, seeing this work evolve and working with members from across the Assembly, as well as taking part in parish roadshows and communicating these proposals to the public, was interesting and enjoyable. At times, it was also frustrating when the numbers did not add up and we did not always get the results we were hoping for. But I am glad that we were able to adapt and bring forward a compromise on our original proposals, which the Assembly agreed to pass after decades of electoral reform standing still. This is an outstanding achievement for us all, and I am keen to have this legislation brought back as soon as possible for final approval. And I thank members wholeheartedly for their support in achieving this. I am also excited to bring forward the remaining changes to the public elections law, which I hope will be done in time for the next election. Having successfully completed the CPA Election Observer Programme and more recently the one-year professional development certificate in parliamentary governance run by McGill University has given me a good understanding of best practices for democratic legislators and an insight into areas that we need to work on as a parliamentary body. Areas such as support for members when dealing with constituents, communications and professional development. During my election campaign and since being elected, I have been vocal about the importance of ensuring the public are informed of our electoral system and the working of the Assembly. I was shocked but not surprised that Jersey was ranked one of the lowest for civic engagement in all the OECD countries. Having been born here and raised here, sir, I knew there was very little in the way of political education on the island, and this is why I asked to set up the Political Education and Awareness Subcommittee of PPC, which I chair. The work done on this committee really needs to be pushed forward in the final 16 months of this term if we are serious about achieving better voter turnout and engagement. And although COVID has presented us with challenges in this area, I will be making this a priority if I am elected. All members work extremely hard, and I know that non-executive members especially often feel there is less resources available to them. Therefore, it is vital that PPC continues to build on and strengthen this fantastic work already being undertaken by the Greffier Department in providing support to all members. Provisions for accessible resources and training for members needs to continue to evolve so that our Parliament is given the tools to function at its best and given the importance it deserves. COVID has presented us with many challenges this past year, with us all remote working and many of us having not physically been in each other's presence for months. I have strived to support and assist members as much as possible during this difficult time, and I hope I have shown that I am able to work with all members regardless of our politics. As an Assembly, we have had to adapt, reach compromises and meet tight deadlines, and we have done so in an exceptional manner. I hope that members will entrust me with the role of the PPC, and I hope that I will be able to advance the work that is undertaken by the committee and achieve the best outcomes for our Assembly, members and the public. Thank you, sir.
Very much, Deputy. There is now 20 minutes of questions to you. The timing starts now. Conitava St Helier.
Thank you, sir. The Deputy will know that St Helier residents are underrepresented in the States. Even with the reforms that have recently been agreed, St Helier will have 13 votes in the Assembly of 49, when we know that it has at least a third of the population. Could the Deputy say what she will do if she is elected chair of PPC to continue to make sure to work towards a state where everybody in the island has the same power at the ballot box as each other? Thank you.
Thank you, sir, and I thank the Constable for his question. As I'm sure the Assembly are aware, we recently approved some electoral reform, although, like the Constable says, it probably doesn't go far enough for St Helier residents. The Assembly has made its decision, and I won't be seeking to overturn that at this stage. In that proposal, the Assembly also approved the Jersey Election Authority body to be set up, so that going forward, things like this would be looked into by that election authority, which will be completely independent from the State's Assembly. I think that's a real important key to ensure that any electoral reforms going forward are taken seriously, because it can often be seen that members are maybe working in their best interests when looking at electoral reform. So I hope that when the legislation is brought back for the election authority, that this is approved by the Assembly as it has been agreed in principle last year. Thank you, sir.
Well, supplementary, please, sir.
Yes, Conitava.
Would the Deputy agree with me that with thousands of new units destined for St Helier, the situation of voter inequity is only going to get worse with each passing year, and that an Assembly that refuses to deal with this lack of equity can fairly be described as gerrymandering?
Thank you, sir, and I thank the Constable for his follow-up. I think this is quite an emotive subject, and I would agree with the Constable in that the population is ever increasing in the centre of St Helier, and that the system does need to be looked into to ensure that there is voter equity across the board. We'll also have the Boundaries Commission that will be set up to look at that, and I hope that with the census coming forward, there will be more evidence to support any possible changes that then might be proposed by that commissioning body. Thank you, sir.
Very much. Deputy Masson.
Thank you, sir. May I ask the candidate, as you'll know, that during the reform debates into larger constituencies, I've expressed concerns about the cost of running for election and its particular impact on young people and people from poorer backgrounds. And I wonder whether the candidate has any plans to address these concerns.
Thank you, sir, and I thank the Deputy for his question. Yes, this is something that we have looked at. Obviously, the concern that the area that will now be covered by some of the new districts is significantly larger than it was before for some of the candidates that will be standing. I know that Guernsey, for example, gave all of their candidates that were standing for election a set amount of money to help them with this. I think that there are other options that can be explored, for example, providing a facility where the candidates can have their leaflets delivered to everyone in the district through the Greffier department. I know that obviously we've had the vote.je booklet in the past, which it is great, but it is limited in what it can candidates are limited on what they can put into that booklet, and I think that you often can't get a sense for what a person is truly about and what they stand for from something that's generic. So I would like to see maybe some kind of provision that would allow candidates to make sure that their leaflets are distributed to everyone in the district. Failing that, I think the other option would be to have their leaflets uploaded onto the vote.je website. Obviously, everybody's leaflets always is different, and it does I think, communicate an aspect of that candidate that can't be communicated or put across to the public in just a simple 500-word blurb. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Supplementary.
Yes.
And I thank the candidate for her response. Therefore, when putting together the PPC's bid for the government plan for next year, given that it's an election year, would the candidate be proposing funds into that process in order to cover any of these ideas?
Thank you, sir. I have been in talks with the Assistant Greffier about this. There might be the need to ask for some more money. However, I'm hoping that getting rid of the need to put across the vote.je or the volume that used to be produced before of the vote.je booklet will be reduced significantly. So that might reduce the cost of producing that, for example, and that could be redirected to distribute the leaflets, for example, and uploading the leaflet onto the website. I think the website is there, so it can be still utilised. And there is also there's also savings to be made if, for example, automatic registration comes in, as things like letters, for example, but there won't be a need to put out letters to every single household. Thank you, sir.
Deputy Gardner.
Thank you, sir. I would like to ask a candidate what are her views and maybe plans about the electoral register being automatic.
Thank you, sir, and I thank the deputy for her question. This is a stream of a work stream which is currently underway. The aim of this register is that it will draw on various databases that are currently available within government, and it will become an automatic process so that when members of the public reach the qualifying period to be able to vote, they will be automatically put onto this automatic register. It will be an electronic register. It will be centrally populated, but it would still be administrated by the parishes, which I think is really important, as this was something that the election observers highlighted as a positive when they came to observe us in the last election. Thank you, sir.
Supplemental, Deputy.
Thank you, sir. Is the conversation ongoing with the parishes to bring this stream work together?
Thank you, sir. Yes, I believe that the parishes have been included in all of the work around bringing forward the electronic register. This is why we still want them to administrate it and have oversight of it. I'm hoping that with this electronic register, it will make things easier for candidates as well. I believe we had the deputy of Grouville who brought up the issue that the electoral registers at the moment are in very different formats across the different parishes. So this will mean that the register will come together in one format, and hopefully it will be a lot more accessible for any candidates that wish to stand. There's also the the issue that we need to look at as to how accessible we want to make that electoral register. I know that in the UK, for example, there was complications around businesses getting access to that information and using it for marketing purposes, which is obviously something we want to avoid. I think one area that I haven't mentioned is that it would be the opt-out system for the electoral register would also still exist for the same reasons that it currently exists as well. Thank you.
Conor Thompson.
Thank you, sir. If I could just ask the candidate, could she please set out very briefly, because I realise time's limited, her views on the constables retaining their seats in the Assembly going forward? I know this was decided at the last vote on this subject, but clearly it could easily come up again, and I'm just keen to understand what her position is on this.
Thank you, sir. I'm sure as members are aware, I obviously campaigned for one type of states member only. However, I think the public have spoken, and also the Assembly has spoken as well, and I think it's really important that the constables are seen as the heart of the community, and they do play a role in the parishes. And I think that as long as the public believe that the constables should retain some kind of role within the Assembly, then that needs to be respected. Thank you, sir.
Supplemental comment up?
Yes, please. I thank the candidate for her clear expression of her views. Could she also just express a view on the recent introduction of none of the above as an option on the ballot paper, and what her views on that are?
Thank you, sir. I'm not sure if members were aware, but I think I was the only one out of my party that voted in favour of that. I understand that there are some difficulties around the none of the above option. Obviously, if the none of the above option wins, we need to look into what would happen there. However, I did during the election campaign hear a lot from the members of the public that one of the reasons that they often didn't vote was because they didn't want to vote for any of the candidates, and they didn't want to spoil their ballot paper. So I think in the interest of increasing voter turnout and voter engagement, I supported the idea of having none of the above, and I look forward to seeing how that pans out in the future. Thank you, sir.
Deputy Ward.
Thank you, sir. Can I ask the candidate what action she's taken to increase her knowledge since being elected of the areas of around PPC and governance, and what she would feel would be useful for members of the Assembly to undertake in terms of their own personal development and professional development? Thank you, sir.
Thank you, sir, and I thank the Deputy for his question. I mentioned in my opening speech that I have taken part in the one-year professional development certificate in parliamentary governance, which was set up by CPA and run by McGill University. I think it's a shame that this isn't actually open to all members. It's specifically designed for new members joining Parliament, but I think that there are areas in that are definitely worth maybe putting together a bespoke programme for all members. And giving all members access to that. I think talking more widely, I would like to see more events run by professionals or experts in different fields. For example, I know that many members attended the briefing on attracting a more diverse range of election candidates, which was beginning of might have been last month, I think, or beginning of this month, which was organised by Deputy Doublé as the chair of Diversity Forum, and I had a lot of positive feedback from that. And I think that this is the kind of thing that should be put on more often for members, so that we can look at more professional development opportunities. And yeah, thank you, sir.
Supplemental, Deputy.
So I was going to actually ask what type of ideas for training. Can I ask the candidate, does she believe that perhaps areas such as training in developing media skills, etc., is something that should be offered to States members?
Thank you, sir. Yes, absolutely. I know that personally, having come into this role and never been in contact with the media, it was a very daunting thing, and it's definitely an area that we can involve. There has been, I know there's been a couple of sessions run before, because I attended one day one regarding working with the media, but I'm very open to hear members' ideas, and I think anything that makes us more productive as an assembly and more confident in the way that we work needs to definitely be explored and looked into. Thank you, sir.
I just mentioned there are a large number of members who still wish to ask questions, and we're on to our last 5 minutes. Senator Mezek.
Thank you, sir. Since returning to the backbenchers, I found it very frustrating dealing with States members' resources, and in particular the computers in the States members' facilities in the Assembly room, which are appalling and take about 3 hours to log into. If elected, would this candidate offer to discuss with States members how facilities could be improved for them, so that we're able to actually do our jobs and be able to print things off and things like that, just because that's something that's caused me a lot of frustration recently.
Yeah, thank you, sir, and I thank the Senator for his question. I think I'm always open to members' issues, and I think one of the things that we could do is maybe put together a survey to look at improving the facilities that we currently have. I think it's really important that members' time is used productively, and waiting around for old computers to boot up is not a productive use of time. I have to say that I did go into the States building the other day, and I noticed that some of the screens, for example, had been upgraded. But I think the machines haven't been upgraded necessarily, and I think this just highlights that I would like to see our Parliament given the same level of support and importance and urgency when it comes to upgrading equipment as is given to government departments, because in my opinion, first and foremost, we're all members of Parliament before any of us become members of government, and so we should be given the same level of support and resources. Thank you, sir.
Supplemental, Senator?
No, thank you, sir.
Deputy Doublé.
I'd like to ask the candidate, I'm quoting a phrase from the proposer of the other candidate who said balance and bringing the Assembly together is important. I'd like the candidate, this candidate, to explain how she would do this and how she would do it in as inclusive manner as possible.
Thank you, Sarah, and I thank the Deputy for her question. Obviously, it's very important that we have representation on the panel, which is as representative as possible from the Assembly. I will state now that I would like the committee to stay as it is as much as possible. I think for continuity, and we've worked really well as a team, and there's a good balance there of gender and interests as well. We haven't always agreed, and I think that's really important because it's often how we disagree that pushes us forward. But I'm sure the Deputy is aware that I've been involved in numerous policy boards, for example, and I'm not afraid to talk to anyone and ask for ideas from anyone. In fact, I welcome that. I think it's really important that we get different perspectives on issues, because different people see things in different ways, and that always needs to be taken into account. Thank you, sir.
Supplemental, Deputy?
Yes, please, sir. And how would the candidate involve the wider Assembly who aren't necessarily members of the committee?
Thank you, Sarah, and I thank the Deputy for her question. I think that PPC has various subcommittees that are set up to bring members together. I would encourage members to take part in those subcommittees, because those subcommittees often form part of the of feeding back into things that we discuss as the main PPC committee. So I think that would be a way of bringing members together, and also things like surveying members for looking at member support, which has been mentioned before. I think that's really important as well. Thank you, sir.
Deputy Sutton, there may be chance for an extremely swift question.
I'll try, sir. What concrete steps will the candidate take to improve voter participation in our electoral process?
Thank you, sir. And I think the key to this is the informing the public, keeping the public informed and educating and raising political awareness as a whole. I'm sure members are aware that I am the chair of the Political Education and Awareness Subcommittee, and on that subcommittee I've made sure that I've had a balance of members, which include 2 constables, the Constable of Grooville and the Constable of St Helier. This is a work stream that I think definitely needs to be looked into. Obviously, COVID has given us some issues, because originally we wanted to get out into community events, for example, and kind of spread the word on how to vote.
I'm afraid, Deputy, I must ask you to stop at this point.
Thank you, sir.
That your time has expired. Very well. Thank you, Deputy Alves. If you would now leave the meeting, and again, as the way it's operated before, someone from the States Gref will telephone you. And when we're satisfied that that's the system has set up, then we'll proceed with the Connétable of St Brelade. And could the States Gref please now arrange for the Connétable of St Brelade to rejoin the meeting? Thank you. This may take a moment or two, so we'll pause. Welcome back, Connétable St Brelade. We'll start when we're sure the protocol applying to Deputy Alves has been complied with. Just a moment.
Thank you, sir.
Very well, the protocol has been complied with. Connétable St Brelade, you have 10 minutes to speak. The timer starts now. It'll be followed by 20 minutes of questions. Connétable. Connétable, your muting appears to be on.
Right, that's better. Thank you, sir. This has taken me somewhat by surprise and has not given much time for preparation, apart from the last 10 minutes of Deputy Alves' speech, which I, of course, didn't hear. I do, however, sir, speak in these times of diversity as a white-haired old male who fully supports the philosophy of diversity. The former chairman, sir, has performed the role of chairman of PPC with great efficiency and aplomb, which no one could aspire to emulate. But I can assure members, sir, that in all the roles I've undertaken, I would perform it to the best of my ability. This, sir, is my third term in the Assembly, and the array of procedural complexity never ceases to amaze me in this Assembly. Having a Connétable of PPC, sir, is not new, and I recall the former Connétable of St Clement, Derek Gray, held the position when I was first elected in 2005, and he was ably followed by the former Connétable of St Mary, Juliette Galachon. Members, sir, will be curious as to my views on election reform as proposed by the present committee. I am by nature a traditionalist, but I'm not at all averse to new ideas and change if it can be justified. I believe, sir, and have always maintained in election manifestos that the Jersey public likes stability, business likes stability, and that is also my philosophy. I am a traditionalist, but I welcome new ideas as we cannot cast ourselves in aspect and get left behind. My thoughts on parties, sir, are yet to be confirmed, and I can only observe that even going back to the Rose and Laurel Party in the mid-19th century, they've never really worked over here. I am so fiercely independent, and my voting record will dictate that. I tend to support whatever I deem to be the best for the island, based on the best information of the day. I do so believe in fairness and integrity and trust, and I can assure members that I shall always adhere to those principles, whether elected or not. The work of PPC, sir, is much and varied, and I would confirm that my application to the tasks in hand, if elected, would be assiduous and concentrated. I'm aware of the close role played by PPC with the GREF, and rest assured, sir, I will continue, if elected, to cultivate that. The membership of the present committee, sir, is broad and with varied experience, and it would not be my intention, if elected, to make any changes in that respect, if those members wish to continue to serve. So I thank members for their attention and look forward to their questions. Thank you, sir.
Very much, Connétable. There now follows a period of 20 minutes. The clock is starting now. Connétable St Helier.
Thank you, sir. And I'd like to ask a question as a former chair of PPC, probably before the candidate's time, though. Would the candidate advise what action he would seek to take to address the inequity that exists in voting in Jersey, which could lead one to say that we have a gerrymandered system? Even with the reforms recently agreed, St Helier will only have 13 votes in an assembly of 49 members, whereas it should have at least 13 of the seats. It should have at least a third of the seats. Could he say what steps he would take to address this important issue?
Thank you, sir. My views are that I agree that the representation of St Helier is poor, but I would suggest that that's sometimes dictated by the lack of voter turnout in St Helier, and thereby in turn the lack of candidates coming forward to serve the parish. I believe that the proposals made by the present PPC are a halfway house and are contributing to remove that inequity. I would always be open to the ideas of the Connétable of St Helier to propose alternatives, should he so wish.
Supplementary, please, sir.
Yes, Connétable.
Is it a matter of concern to the candidate that when the Constable of St Mary votes on an important matter affecting the island, or indeed affecting St Helier, he has far more power at the ballot box than the Constable of St Helier?
Yes, no doubt in terms of numbers that is the case, sir, but in reality that is the situation we have in Jersey, and if we wish to throw out all our traditions, well, we could aspire to the Conotab's wishes, but in reality, we have to make a compromise, and that is a compromise we have to make should we wish to retain our 12 parishes.
Conotab St Won.
Thank you, sir. Could I ask the candidate, given that the position of the constables in the States was a fairly controversial topic during the last debate, could he set out his views on whether he believes the constables should retain their seat in the Assembly, or whether he feels in time that that will disappear? Thank you, sir.
Well, clearly, so there is a desire by the public of the island that the Conotables do remain in the States, and that in turn leads to the point that there is an inexorable link between the parishes and government. And I think that were Conotables to be removed from the States, I think we would lose that link, which would be of detriment to Jersey and to the public in general.
Supplemental, Conotab St Won.
Thank you, sir. Could I ask the candidate to set out his views on the recent introduction of the none of the above option, which was agreed by the Assembly at the last debate on the construction of the Assembly? Thank you, sir. I
don't agree with having that particular element in a choice, because it's akin to abstaining in a state's election. There will be those who choose not to have a view, but I think it's important to give the public sufficient choice in views to avoid having to offer such a choice.
Deputy Higgins.
Thank you, sir. I'd like to know the candidate's views. The States, after many, many years, has agreed to larger districts and changing the composition of states by removing the senators. This is coming back to the Assembly in the form of legislation. Does the candidate fully support that? And would he support those who would like to try and change it yet again?
I believe so, that the states have agreed to that proposal, and it is for that to be enacted. I am a believer in democracy, whether I agree with it or not, but once a democratic decision has been made, I see no advantage in revisiting the whole thing and starting all over again. So the straight answer is that I would proceed with the decision made by this Assembly.
Thank you.
Deputy Higgins.
Yes, thank you, sir. One of the problems, especially in places like St Heliers, not so much a problem in the parishes, is where people go to cast their votes. Normally there's a lack of parking and everything else. And for as long as I've been in the States, we've been trying to seek new locations so people can vote easily, or even electronically. What is the candidate's view on those two issues?
I would concur wholeheartedly with the deputy's suggestion, sir, in that the ability of the electorate to vote must be made easier, and by making it difficult by insufficient parking in the voting stations is, of course, something we have to overcome. I do believe that we will embrace technology to make it simpler. I do think that the public ought to be able to vote for whichever district they live in, wherever they live, and particularly in St Helier where people are working, so that we can just get the numbers up to satisfy democracy. Thank you, sir.
Deputy Dublé.
Thank you, sir. The proposer for the candidate mentioned balance and bringing the Assembly together. I'd like to ask the candidate how he would achieve this and how he would be inclusive in doing so.
I think the important thing is to work with prospective candidates before the election time and encourage those from a broad base of backgrounds to allow their names to go forward, so that the public of the island have the choice and the best candidates for the job get elected.
Supplemental, Deputy Dublé?
I think perhaps the candidate might have misunderstood the question. It was more about involving the wider States Assembly and how the candidate would do that.
Well, once the wider ranging members have been elected, I think it can only be by invitation, by outreach, and by encouraging those who are perhaps not involved in certain areas which they would prove to be of benefit to reach out and encourage them to join in. And that has been my modus operandi throughout parish life as well.
Deputy Gardner.
Thank you, sir. I would like to ask a candidate if he will be successful, what will be his plans, and if no plans, what are views about the electoral register being automatic?
I think the electoral registration needs work. At present, it's easy to say it's automatic, but there have to be filters. That could be done in technological terms, and I think there will be technological input into any future registers. I can assure the Deputy from experience of working in the parish and having a close involvement with how the registration works. It's not as simple as might be thought, but I would be very keen to modernise it to ensure that everyone in the island has a vote.
Supplemental, Deputy Gardner?
No, thank you.
Deputy Ward.
Thank you, sir. I'm just trying to remember wording before, so it's the same question and a fair test. Can I ask the candidate what training he has undertaken since being elected, which is relevant to the role of chair of PPC, and what he believes members should be offered in terms of training to help assist them in their roles? Thank you, sir.
I think in terms of my training, sir, I've attended two CPA events with a particular application to electoral management, and I think that has been a very useful experience. I do think, sir, that in the process, and I go back to a response I made just now, that there is need for training prior to election, so that those members who put their names forward into the States do have some idea of what's going on, rather than coming in completely green, as is in the case very often at the moment. Our election processes have evolved over many years and are well organised, but we must always look ahead. Training in terms of technological input, I think, is essential. A lot of us, and I speak for myself, benefit from that to take full advantage of the facilities that we have out there and technological improvements which have been revealed, should we say, in the last year or so with the necessities of COVID. Thank you.
Supplemental, Deputy Ward.
Yes, so can I ask the candidate's opinion on diversity training, unconscious bias training, and things like dealing with the media? Would he suggest that members are given access to those? Thank you, sir.
Yes, indeed, sir. The unconscious bias training has been provided to date, and I think there's more to come. Training with the media has been provided, and I've attended some of those. We can always improve ourselves, sir, and I think the more training opportunities that PPC can provide via the GREFTA members, the better.
Deputy Tadier.
Thank you, sir. Does the candidate think that engagement of young people in the political process is an issue currently? And if so, what steps might he take to deal with that?
Oh, yes, sir. It is lacking, and it goes back to the previous questioner. So maybe that States members need education in dealing with the younger residents of the island. Maybe we need to do more work with the schools to stimulate more interest from the younger people in our political situation. And I would confirm with the Deputy that my enthusiasm for dealing with the younger population, or younger members of our population, is very high.
Supplemental, Deputy Tadier.
No, sir.
Deputy Southern. Deputy Southern. Deputy Massell.
So I'm there, I'm in now.
Okay, Deputy Southern.
Mute button wasn't working. Yeah, what concrete steps would the candidate take to improve voter participation in our electoral process?
Going back to a previous response, I think work on making it easier for electors to vote has to be a priority. It is challenging at the moment, and I've seen this at ground level when people turn up to vote and can't for whatever reason, and then we have queues coming in at after work where people having to form long queues to be able to vote. That's far from satisfactory. So perhaps more voting stations in the town or in the concentrated areas where people are working would be an advantage. Cross-referencing throughout the island has to be made to work technologically, and I can see that being as an easy win to start with. Thank you, sir.
Supplemental, Deputy Sutton?
No, sir, that'll be fine.
Deputy Masson?
Thank you, sir. I asked the other candidate the same question. In the recent reform debates and the move to the larger districts, I expressed concern about the cost of standing for election for younger and poorer candidates. I wonder whether the candidate has any thoughts on how or if anything can be done to support candidates who come from these backgrounds. Thank you, sir.
So if I'm understanding the question correctly, it's down to he's questioning the ability to provide funding for elections, and if that's the case, my suggestion is that with the new proposals, the costs needn't be as much as they would have been for a former senatorial candidate, and will be restricted to possibly a similar amount that is being paid or being put out by deputorial and constable candidates presently. The costs can of course be whatever one wishes it to be, and probably depend on the amount of effort a particular candidate is prepared to make themselves, or put into, shall we say, printing posters, putting up posters and such like. So I think that there will have to be consideration given in the light of changed processes to the amounts allowable, but I would imagine they will be not dissimilar to those allowed to deputies at present.
Supplemental, Deputy Masson?
Thank you, sir, and I thank the candidate for his answer. Can I ask whether the candidate feels that extra support could be given around, for example, providing an envelope so candidates can, and the stamp postage, so that candidates can actually be able to put out their literature to a wider district, and whether he would be prepared to put that into PPC's MTFP budget request for the next government plan.
Yes, I would tend to agree with the deputy, but of course already there is a mass circulation of manifestos done by the GREF, so there's no reason why that shouldn't be just discussed further to establish what would work better, because the bottom line has to be to get the maximum amount of information to the electorate so that they can vote in accordance with their wishes.
Well, Senator Valois.
Yes, thank you, sir. I'd like to ask the candidate, what 3 top areas of work would he focus on to achieve during the remainder of this term of office if appointed?
That's an interesting question with a short lead time, but I think the first one is to close off the electoral reforms proposed by the existing PPC. The states have decided we must proceed with that. I think that improvement in technology processes, which we have learned rapidly over the last year, and the improvement thereof is high on the priority list. And I would suggest that thirdly, sir, the training, as indicated by former questioners, is an area which I would like to enhance.
Supplemental, Senator?
Yes, please, sir. Can I ask the candidate then what his view is of machinery of government and whether that needs continuous review and what he would do about it?
Well, I'm not overly sure whether the present machinery of government has worked terribly well as we would have wished, and I can only say that from the experience I've had of working with a particular chief officer as a former minister, and my take, shall we say, on the present situation with a particularly dominant chief officer or chief officer role, not applying to any individual, is that it doesn't appear to me to be working as we would have wished. So I think that review is continually needed.
Senator Mesnick.
Thank you, sir. Same question that I asked previously. Would the candidate pledge to engage with states members if elected on what can be done to improve facilities for states members. Obviously, members of the government have facilities provided for them at Broad Street, and constables have their parish halls, but some of the facilities in the States Assembly building itself are pretty poor, in particular the computer facilities. So would he pledge to do that work with members to work out how that can be improved?
I would agree, and my understanding is that the GREF are underway and have budget for doing exactly that. So I see no reason why that process shouldn't continue, and will no doubt be enhanced in time depending on technology available. But for backbenchers to do their job properly, the facilities must be provided. And I would actually take this opportunity to thank those in the GREF who have actually been doing that to date. Thank you, sir.
Supplemental, Senator? No, Senator?
No, thank you, sir.
Senator Farnham.
Thank you, sir. Could the candidate inform the Assembly on his views on states members' remuneration and whether he thinks they're appropriate, adequate, or need complete review? Thank you.
Yes, sir. I'm aware that there are those with the view that the states members shouldn't be remunerated at all. There are those with a view that the remuneration is adequate, and there are those who take the view that they are totally out of kilter with the private sector and the sort of responsibility that states members have in relation to the private sector are not in harmony. So we find ourselves with a base salary. Some would dispute that, and I think that a review is long overdue.
Supplementary, if I may, sir. Does the candidate think that the level of states members' pay has impact on the type and number of candidates coming forward for election?
It has been made clear that that is the case, sir, and I've read from several that they feel deterred by the level of salary, in that if it's equated, as I indicated earlier, with the private sector, it is much less. So that will inevitably have an effect on those members putting their names forward for election.
Deputy St Mary.
Thank you, sir. If elected, will the candidate still intend to carry on with his present role as chair of the Environment Panel? Thank you.
Sadly, not, sir. And it's a role I've thoroughly enjoyed, and actually would be reluctant to give up. But I think realistically, one wouldn't have the time in the running of a parish, which I have to give much attention to, and more than one additional role.
Supplemental. Well, any other questions for the candidate? There's 30 seconds to go, so it has been an exceptionally brief one. Senator Pallett, you've got 20 seconds.
Sir, as you've said, it's only 20 seconds. I'll withdraw the question because it's going to take a longer answer.
Very well. In which case, very well, the time has now expired for questions to this candidate. Therefore, there'll be a pause whilst the greffier arranges for Deputy Alves to return to the meeting, and at that point then we'll deal with the voting.
So could I just ask a question? Can I check if this is an open vote for the chair, like it is for ministers? Thank you, sir.
Yes, it is, Deputy. It's an open vote.
Thank you, sir.
When the link is posted and members seek to vote, there will be a choice between candidates. It's not a pour, contre, or abstain. There's just a choice between candidates which can be voted on.
So could I just ask a point of order? It's not so much for Deputy Tadyer.
Yes, Deputy. What can I do for you?
It's probably not going to be relevant to this vote, but I think that it's always useful to have an abstention option in these kind of debates, because that any member, if it was done by paper or in the assembly, could abstain.
Yes.
Not encouraging that by any means, but I think just for the proper process.
So I presume if a member wishes to abstain, they simply don't vote, or would they write abstain in the chat, sir? What would your advice be?
One moment, I'm just making sure I understand exactly what the options are on the vote itself. One moment. In the circumstances, and whilst we're waiting for Deputy Alves to return, it is an option not to vote, but the greffier informs me that we can add abstain to the voting options and are content to do so.
I'm back, sir. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Deputy. I see Deputy Alves has rejoined us. We'll just wait then for the greffier to make that slight alteration, and then the link will be posted. Well, abstentions don't count in the vote, do they? Members may recall it has formally been ruled that in the event that a member abstains or there are a number of abstentions, an abstention does not count as a vote cast for the purposes of assessing whether a sufficient majority of votes has been received by one candidate or another. Very well, apparently we're now ready to begin, and the link is in the chat, and I'm open the voting and ask members to vote. Members have had the opportunity of casting their votes. Ask the greffier to close the voting. And I can announce that Deputy Alves has been elected. 31 votes for Deputy Alves, 12 votes for Connie Jackson in the link, and 1 vote for each of them in the chat.
Sir, as it is an open vote, can we have them read out for both candidates, please? Thank you.
And the abstentions, please.
Yes, they can be read out, but of course, is that necessary? Because we still have a well, they are all listed now. They've all appeared in the list in the chat, but entirely happy to read them out if people want them read out.
Well, I'm fine with that. It was just for, as you say, it's an open vote. Anyone can pick that up. I'm fine, sir, if that's okay with everyone else.
And the listening public, sir.
That's right.
No, that's a fair point. Could we please read out the votes?
Thanks, Deputy Southern.
Right. Those voting for Deputy Alves, Deputy Doublé, Deputy Pamplin, Deputy Labby, the Deputy of St Martin, Deputy Alves, Senator Mesick, Deputy Ward, Deputy Pershard, Deputy Ayer, Deputy Higgins, Senator Valois, Deputy Gardner, Deputy Lehegara, Deputy Martin, Senator Moore, the Conotab of St Helier, Deputy Pinnell, Deputy Tadier, the Conotab of St Juan, Deputy Southern, the Deputy of St Juan, Deputy Young, Senator Pallett, the Deputy of Trinity, the Constable of Trinity, Deputy Morel, Deputy Ash, Deputy Masson, Deputy Lewis, the Conotab of St Martin, and the Deputy of St John. Those voting for the Conotab of St Brelard, the Deputy of St Peter, the Conotab of Grouville, the Conotab of St Clement, Senator Gorst, Deputy Guida, the Conotab of St Saviour, the Deputy of Grouville, Senator Farnham, the Conotab of St Lawrence, Deputy Truscott, the Conotab of St Peter, the Conotab of St John, and those abstaining Conotab of St Brelard and Senator Le Fondre.
So, could I please note that this is Constable of St Mary. I did try to vote for Constable Jackson, but I was unable to get into the system. Thank you, sir.
Well, thank you. Well, that would not have changed the result, Conotab, but thank you for that. Conotab of St Brelard, you indicated a desire to say something.
Yes, sir, just to offer my congratulations to Deputy Alves and pledge my support for her chairmanship of the BBC. Thank you, sir.
Thank you very much, Conotab. Well, I congratulate the successful candidate, of course, and we now move on as, yes, Deputy Alves, did you want to say something?
Sorry, I just wanted to say to thank all members for their support. Thank you, sir.
Very much, Deputy, very well. Following again the appointment of Deputy Labby as Minister, there's a vacancy for the position of the Chair of the Planning Committee, and in accordance with Standing Order 120 AA, I invite nominations from members for the office of Chair of the Planning Committee.
Sir, Deputy Truscott here.
Yes, Deputy.
Sir, I'm delighted to nominate the Conotab of Trinity for the position of Chair of the Planning Committee. Thank you, sir.
Is that nomination seconded?
Yes, sir.
Are there any other nominations for the Chair of the Planning Committee? Well, if there are no other nominations, then I invite the Conotab of Trinity to speak for up to 10 minutes, after which there will be a question period of up to 20 minutes in the normal way. Conotab of Trinity.
Thank you, sir. Firstly, I'd like to add my congratulations to Deputy Russell Labby on his recent appointment. He leaves some big shoes to fill and has done a sterling job as the chairman of the Planning Committee. And whilst I do not share his stage presence, I will do my very best to continue the work of the committee. I'd also like to thank Deputy Truscott for nominating me, as we both joined the Planning Committee shortly after we were first elected in 2014, when I served as the Vice Chairman to Constable Juliette Galichon. In November 2018, I was persuaded to rejoin the committee by Deputy Russell Labby and have served as a regular member ever since. I have a genuine interest in the development of our built environment and the planning process, which is derived from my working career back when I had a proper job, which was entirely in the construction industry. I worked in many aspects of the industry, coming from a trade background, progressing through to senior management, and during that time involved in all types of construction work, from new build
to restoration projects with English heritage and just about everything else in between. Spending part of the last 20 years in Jersey working for a property development company. This has given me a real understanding of the construction process, design, interpretation of working drawings, through which I believe I can make a positive contribution to this role and the work of the Planning Committee. I've never made a secret of the fact that I will not stand by and see our historical assets and built heritage lost in the name of progress. But by the same token, I will take a pragmatic view in determining applications in whatever means I believe is for the best outcome for the whole of people of Jersey. As a committee, we are not a rubber stamping exercise and we do not always follow the officer's recommendations. Our role is to challenge those recommendations and indeed the applications before us. If it was simply a case of applications being approved, if they ticked all the boxes, then there would be no purpose in having a planning committee. Often the decisions we must take are particularly difficult and sometimes emotive, as they directly impact on people's lives. Often one party will leave a application committee public meeting happy and the other party disappointed. We do not, however, take the easy option or kowtow to commercial blackmail, but will arrive at a democratic decision in the very best interests of all. We are only part of the overall planning process. There is always the option to appeal a committee decision to an independent planning inspector, and the final determination is always made by the planning minister. I don't think there's any need for me to say much more at this point. There is a significant backlog of work for the committee, which has not been helped by the COVID restrictions. But I look forward to taking on this role and hopefully have the confidence of the other members. I am in a position to nominate a committee this morning. Thank you, sir.
Very much indeed, Conitab. There is now a period of 20 minutes of questions and the time starts now. Deputy Higgins.
Thank you, sir. Could the Chairman-elect for this body state what his view is that when the panel actually rejects a property with significant reasons and it is then overturned by officers within days, what's his view on that?
I don't actually understand the circumstances in which that would occur, because if a matter has been brought to committee and the committee has determined, then that particular application is determined on the outturn of the result of the committee decision. If it then the applicant reapplies and there is no grounds on which it needs to be brought back to the committee, I'm afraid I can't really comment because I'm not aware of any particular circumstance where that has occurred.
Supplementary, sir?
Yes, indeed.
Could I also ask the candidate, I might add that it has happened, could I ask the candidate as well what his view is on preserving Jersey's historic houses and where owners convert them without permission? What sort of penalties does he think they should suffer?
I don't really think that is a decision for the Planning Applications Committee. Our role is to determine the applications before us, not to comment on wider aspects of the bylaws and planning process.
Well, Deputy Masson.
Thank you, sir. And may I congratulate the chairman-elect on this position. Obviously, I served on the planning committee with him and know he will be a great asset in that role. But can I ask the candidate, when members sit on the planning committee, they are there in a quasi-judicial role, and obviously they have to work within the parameters of the island plan, and their decisions can be appealed to the Royal Court. We have a tribunal system as well now. I wonder whether the candidate feels that because of that, it would be appropriate to take this as an opportunity, perhaps, to promote the parameters of the committee to members and the wider public, as we don't make purely political decisions on the planning committee. Thank you, sir.
I'm not quite sure how to best to answer that. I do feel that sometimes that by delegating the decisions to an independent planning inspector who's not necessarily resident in Jersey, that we're sort of dodging a bullet, really. And I think we should be more in control of our own destiny as an island. I don't know if that answers the question adequately. But.
Thank you. So supplementary, I thank the candidate for his response. I apologise, I'll try and be clearer. Does the candidate think that this is an opportunity for him as chairman to better inform states members and the public of the role of the planning committee?
Oh yes, as a committee we will be producing our annual report which is due in Q1 of this year, and I will do my best to enhance and perhaps better amplify the work of the committee in that report.
Deputy Ward.
Thank you, sir. Can I ask the constable and to congratulate him on his election? What's the role of planning in the promotion of more sustainable builds, both in terms of the lived environment and in terms of our commitment to carbon neutrality and future builds that have to last long into the coming years? Thank you, sir.
As a committee, we sit to determine the applications that are before us. We can, as part of our committee role, make recommendations to the minister, but it isn't for us to design or advise people on how they should apply the regulations and the bylaws, although I'm sure that we will take the appropriate view when green initiatives come forward, and I think it is beholden on all of us to support those initiatives.
Supplementary, Deputy?
Yes, sir, thank you. Does the chair-elect feel that the island plan coming forward could have more rigour in terms of its definition of sustainability? Thank you, sir.
I think that's actually straying away from the role of the planning committee, but obviously our planning minister is committed to delivery of carbon neutral strategies, and I'm sure that will be embodied in the plan that's going to come forward fairly shortly.
College Harbison Brillard.
Thank you, sir. Would the candidate outline to members what his views are on the architecture of Jersey, in that does he prefer a particular vernacular style, or could he just outline his views in general? Thank you, sir.
It's not really for the committee to say whether they like something or not. It is whether it is right in its particular context. And I obviously come from a traditional background, but I still enjoy modern and innovative architecture. I'm sure with many people. All I would say is that every scheme has to be judged on its merits and set within the context of which it's got to live.
Supplemental, College Harbison Brillard?
No, sir, I thank the constable for his answer. Thank you.
Senator Moore.
Thank you, sir. Given the chair's comment about the role of independent inspectors in the planning process, does the chair consider that the planning committee should have a greater role in determining any application made to build our hospital?
No, I think that the hospital is such a major project that it would be unwise to take it to a local planning committee. I think it is a much bigger scheme, and I think in that circumstance it should go to an independent inspector to advise the minister. I'm more inclined when it's the smaller domestic type situations where we are not as much in control of our own destiny as I would like to see us.
Supplemental, Senator?
No, thank you. I'm grateful for the answer.
Deputy Whittington.
Thank you, sir. We've seen a number of times this term where a planning application has been approved by officers, by the committee, by independent inspector, only to get to the minister who unilaterally decides the opposite to everyone. Do you think that the minister, before overturning such decisions, should speak to the committee to hear why they chose the decision they did as a committee rather than as an individual before overturning such applications without visiting sites?
Thank the Deputy for his question, and yes, I think my initial thoughts are that that would be a good idea and is perhaps something that the committee could put in their next report to the Minister on where we think we should be going and how we should perhaps be changing our protocols.
Supplemental, Deputy Whittington?
No, sir.
Connie Harbison Lawrence.
Thank you, sir. The committee is advised at the decision-making process by an officer from the planning department, an officer who very often has already been involved with the application before the committee. Does the chairman believe that the committee should be able to take independent advice rather than that of an officer from the department? Thank you, sir.
No, my experience is that the advice that the committee is given is usually very objective and based on the planning policies. So I have never felt the need to, in my time on the committee, to step outside of that to get further additional advice.
Supplemental, Connie?
No, thank you, sir.
Are there any other questions for the Connaught Harbour Trinity? If there are no other questions, then I draw the period of questions to an end. There were no other nominations. The speech and period of questions have been completed. I confirm that the Connaught Harbour Trinity has been selected for appointment.
Thank you, sir. And I thank members for their support. I am in a position to nominate a committee. I don't know when we would like to take that.
Well, thank you very much, Connaught Harbour. I was next going to ask you that question, and you've confirmed the answer. Deputy Alves, are you in a position to nominate a committee?
Not quite at the moment, sir, but I probably will be after lunch.
Well, I was going to suggest that we dealt with the nomination of committees the first thing after lunch and adjournment. Would that suit you, Connaught Harbour Trinity?
Yes, sir, that'll be fine. Just whilst I'm speaking, I would advise the Assembly that I will have to disappear at around 2:45 for a medical appointment.
Well, as I say, if we deal with the appointment of your committee first thing at 2:15, then that will presumably work.
Thank you.
A point of order from Deputy Tadier before we finalise those arrangements. Deputy Tadier, did you have a point of order?
Yeah, okay, when I can find the mute, unmute. So I think just, I don't know if it's order or something I'd like to propose is that given the argumentation that the majority of us agreed on yesterday, that it's not, that there should be time for the new chair of each respective panel or committee I think it's best that we have some time to decide who might want to serve and put themselves forward on those panels, because we didn't know who was going to get elected. We can't take anything as read, and so we don't know whether we want to put our names forward for that until we know who's been elected, sir. So can I ask that we don't take it after lunch, but we take it either tomorrow if we're still sitting or at the next meeting, please?
So you're proposing that, Deputy Tadier? Well, I think that's the states, as I say, can regulate its own timing and its own procedure. Obviously, the view of the respective chairs will be of significance, but that is nonetheless a matter for the Assembly. Is that proposition seconded? Is the proposition to defer the matter seconded?
Yes, sir.
Very well, it's seconded. Does any member wish to speak on the proposition that the setting up of the committees are deferred until tomorrow if we are still sitting, or until the next meeting if we're not? Deputy Martin.
Sorry, sir, I was trying to type so fast. I absolutely understand where Deputy Tadeo thinks he's coming from. If he had listened, obviously he did listen to what the workload of PPC is. Planning, the new planning said that he would absolutely can go, and Deputy Alves has said she'll be in a position this afternoon, and she already said in her speech she's probably going to keep or ask, and they've already probably committed to do the final 15-16 months on PPC. I really urge, with no guarantee we're sitting tomorrow, we're on a 3-week cycle, we cannot go and put this back. People know where they want the job. I would suggest to Deputy Tadeo, and I don't think he's doing Deputy Alves any favours. Thank you, sir. I'm definitely voting against this. We do it this afternoon. Thank you, sir.
Does any other member wish to speak on this particular proposition? Constable St John.
Thank you, sir. We heard yesterday how important it was that the planning committee, with its workload, is set up as quickly as possible. And that was agreed, and I would please urge members to support our new chair of the planning committee so that they can hit the road running and get moving straight away, because it's unfair on planning applications that have been waiting for some time to be heard, that there is any delay in forming a committee. Can we please respect the new chairman? Thank you, sir.
Deputy St Peter.
So I just have to remind members I declare an interest. I have a planning application outstanding that has to go to committee, and therefore should this go to a vote, I'll be voting solely on the basis of PPC, because I would obviously withdraw from my vote from the chair of planning or the putting together of the planning committee. Thank you, sir.
Well, Deputy Young.
Sir, there's no question that the appointment of the planning committee as soon as possible is really important, and there doesn't seem to be any issue, frankly, any reason why we shouldn't do that as the new chairman says. But I do think there might be an issue with the PPC, because I didn't hear the chairman of PPC, Deputy Alves, be quite clear. She said she thought she'd be in a position this afternoon. So can I suggest, sir, that look, we should go ahead absolutely after lunch with the immediate appointment of planning members, and then and then only if the chairman of PPC can be very clear that that she needs no more time to do that, sir. Thank you.
Well, Deputy, that would happen in any event. If the Assembly says we go ahead this afternoon, but Deputy Alves this afternoon is not in a position to go ahead, she will simply say to the Assembly she's not in a position to go ahead, and it'll have to come back when it next comes back. So I'm not sure. I hope that helps the Assembly. But
Thank you, sir. That clears it up. Thank you, sir.
Does any other member wish to speak on the proposition? No other member wishes to speak on the proposition? I close the debate and ask Deputy Tadeo to respond.
Thank you, sir. First of all, to address Deputy Martin, is that, well, I'm not trying to do anybody any favours. So she said it's not going to do Deputy Alves any favours to delay it to tomorrow. But what's she trying to imply? That simply because I'm a same party as the chairman, that I might wish to do some favours. What concerns me in all of these processes, sir, and why I raise these issues, is that my concern is that thinking independently from an original Rawlsian position, if you like, about how I would like to see the Assembly operate along completely fair lines, irrespective of who the chairs or who the ministers, etc., are, is that process is vitally important, because it sets precedents And if we're going to argue yesterday that we shouldn't have an election for these key roles because some people might not be ready to put themselves forward, which is absolutely valid and correct, then similarly we should also have a process in place whereby once whereby we have time to digest who's been appointed, who they might wish to put forward as a slate for their committees. But I remind members that it's not the chairs who appoint or elect the committees. It's the Assembly who elects the committees and nobody else. We're not here simply to rubber stamp their selection either. And there might be some people who think, well, actually, I don't necessarily want to put myself forward for that committee, but I need to know that as an Assembly, I feel we're in good hands with the committee that's been selected. And if you think that the slate that's been put forward isn't balanced or doesn't represent the best that the Assembly could do, then you may wish to put yourself forward after that. So I think I know how the wind is blowing today, and it's not because these positions aren't important, it's actually because they are so important, and it's not just the chairs who are important, but it's the whole panels that are important, that we do have a proper process in place. So even if this vote doesn't win today, and you know, we don't know if we're coming back tomorrow, I accept that's part of the problem, I would urge PPC and the new chair and the new committee to look at this, because I think there does need to be a break. And in future, we should be coming back, leave 24 hours, as was suggested by the Deputy of Grouville, perhaps allow the committee chairs to put their nominations forward, for that to be circulated, and then for other nominations to be forthcoming the next day. And if that isn't the case, that's fine, there won't be an election. But if there is, then the democratic process is respected, sir. And that's why I put these things forward. It's not because I have a penchant for pedantry, sir, but it's parliamentary process is vitally important. And we can't just make things up on the hoof because it's convenient for us to do so. I think we have to have processes in place, irrespective of who in the future might be taking these roles up, sir. So I do maintain the proposition, even though it may be doomed to failure.
Thank you very much, Deputy. I ask the greffier to put a vote into the link. A vote pour would be to defer the appointment of the panels to tomorrow morning, if we are still sitting, or until the next sitting of the States Assembly, if we're not sitting tomorrow. I open the voting and ask members to vote. Members have had the opportunity of casting their votes. Ask the greffier to close the voting. The proposition has been defeated. 3 votes pour, 39 votes contre in the link, and 1 further vote contre in the chat.
Can we have the 3? So it's better than I thought.
Three voted pour.
Those voting for: the Deputy of Grouville, Deputy Tadier, and Deputy Pershad.
Very well. We will then deal with the elections at 2:15. As I say, if either of the chairmen are not able to proceed at that point, in which further time it's more than open to them to inform the Assembly at that juncture, but otherwise we will deal with them then. Very well. The next item of public business to be dealt with is the residential properties in the waterfront development, P165, lodged by Senator Mezek. An amendment's been lodged by the Council of Ministers. Senator, do you accept that amendment and wish the proposition read as amended?
Yeah, yes, that's right, sir, I do.
Do members agree to have the proposition read as amended? If anyone doesn't, could they just indicate in the... Very well. I ask the greffier to read the proposition as amended.
The states are asked to decide whether they are of opinion that in the proposed development of the waterfront, defined as key opportunity sites 1, 2 and 3 in the Southwest St Helier Development Framework by the States of Jersey Development Company, SOJDC, A, no residential properties should be sold by the SOJDC to foreign buy-to-let investors. B, to request the Council of Ministers to present a report to the States Assembly by 30th of April 2021, which provides guidance to be used by SOJDC with the aim of maximising the proportion of affordable units allocated through the Housing Gateway, together with a range of other residential accommodation of varying prices, types and tenure, to help meet the housing aspirations of other islanders within the waterfront development, while maintaining the overall viability of the scheme, including all public realm improvements and other community and leisure uses. And C, to request the Minister for Treasury and Resources as shareholder representative to instruct the SOJDC accordingly.
Senator.
Thank you, sir. Can I start by saying I'm grateful to Deputies Pinnell and Ash for meeting with me recently to discuss ways forward on this, and I was pleased to be able to contribute to the report that accompanied their amendment. And so I guess I hope that means this might be a relatively short debate. The intention of my proposition was to ensure that a mandate is given by this Assembly to the SOJDC that whatever they plan for the waterfront must play a direct part in addressing the housing needs of the island, rather than a less tangible indirect part by supposedly raising profits to channel elsewhere, which is a dubious strategy in my view. I propose that no properties should be sold to foreign investors who would take advantage of a government-backed scheme to profiteer, funnel money out of our economy and risk damaging our local housing market by contributing to rental inflation. And I'm pleased that the government has accepted this. I also propose that there ought to be a 50-50 split in the housing that is created, with half being allocated through our established affordable housing gateway, which basically means it would be for first-time buyers who can't afford to purchase on the open market, or for social renters. The government's amendment takes out a specific commitment to a 50-50 split, but instead it accepts that the proportion of affordable housing should be maximised, and maximised is the key word there, whilst maintaining the viability of the whole plan, including the community facilities and public realm improvements. And they say that that work should be done to define this balance more clearly and then presented back to the states in the coming months. And so, since our principles are aligned there in wanting to maximise the proportion of affordable housing, then I think it's worth accepting that. I don't think there's use fighting over a specific 50-50 split when the optimum could be something else. You know, if it turned out to be a 51-49 split or anything that can be defined and justified, then I say that's something to welcome and it takes us in the right direction. I have to say, sir, that I do take particular gratification at this meeting of minds, given that when I proposed this radical notion that publicly owned developers working on publicly owned land should be providing a public benefit, I was accused by commentators in the JEP of being economically illiterate and a muddle-headed left-winger. But in actual fact, this proposal's strength is its economic literacy. The raison d'etre is to provide a targeted supply of housing to people who need it, so that they're able to establish their lives around the stability that provides to be happier and more productive and able to spend more in the local economy, because they're not sending half of their half-earned wages to some faceless investor somewhere else in the world. And when interest rates are so low and the government acts as guarantor to our government-owned developers, it simply doesn't make sense to try to profiteer out of our land to cross-subsidise a scheme on land we'd have to buy elsewhere, when this scheme will pay itself off anyway with the rental income over a planned period. And some detractors were also making what I thought were quite nasty suggestions that a nice view was something that poorer people should never be entitled to. And I'm glad that that view is rejected. So Jersey faces a housing affordability crisis. Home ownership is growing further out of reach for many, as house prices have consistently increased at a greater rate than earnings, whilst the numbers of those living in rental stress goes up and up. The cost of housing is the single biggest contributing factor for causing relative poverty in the island, and we need to take action to deal with this. Some say that the solution to this is simply to increase the supply of housing. And I don't completely agree with that, because I think it is more complicated than just building new homes. We could continue building new homes, but if they all get bought up by the wrong people for things like lock up and leave, then we won't be doing anything to address housing need. We need to get the right type of homes to go to the right people, and we need a more targeted approach. And on an island with not a lot of space to be building homes, we need to take advantage of every opportunity we get. And that's why I say we need to make the most out of this particular opportunity. I think you'd probably struggle to find anyone who believes that our waterfront is currently meeting its potential. So it is welcome that the SOJDC want to deliver on a visionary scheme there and make it something that we can all be proud of. And that's a prospect I'm quite excited by. But this proposition says that this shouldn't come at any cost. If it's purely to be a money-making scheme, then we'll have to live with the legacy of that for decades to come. And a better legacy would be a waterfront development that balances out the need for new facilities down there and produce targeted housing for people in Jersey who need it. This is perfectly financially feasible. We just need to do the work to demonstrate how. And that is what this proposition now will do with the amendment from the Council of Ministers. And if any of what I've said makes sense to members, and I apologise if they think that they may get tarred with the muddle-headed left-wing brush as well, but I hope that they can put that aside and support this and help us take a step towards getting a waterfront that we can be proud of as an island, that plays a huge role in contributing to the housing needs of our constituents. And for those reasons, sir, I make the proposition.
Thank you very much. Senator, is the proposition seconded?
Yes, sir.
Now, Deputy Young, you have a question for the Attorney General.
Yes, I see that the Treasury Minister wanted to speak. I'm happy to do my question after Deputy Pennell's spoken, if that helps.
Well,
I can ask it now. I did give notice to the AG, if you prefer.
Well, I think if you ask it now,
okay, thank you, sir.
Chat, that's appropriate.
Without, obviously, what I'm hoping I can do, I can ask the question without speaking, as it were, and then decide to speak later if I need to. So
you can if you limit it to the question alone.
Thank you, sir. The Part A of the proposition proposes that no residential properties should be sold by SOJDC to foreign buy-to-let investors. Now, I have been raising for a very long time the issue of the legal devices which are used by development companies to sell residential properties. The last lot of figures were there was about 62% of the flats and so on are sold through share transfer. So could the specific question is, can the sale of shares be restricted to people who do not hold local residential qualifications, sir? And can that be done at the start, or can that be controlled as far as onward sales after that, sir? Can it be put in the mem and art? So this of the company, various things, sir. I would very much value an opinion of that, sir.
Mr. Tony, are you in a position to assist the Assembly at this point?
Yes, sir. I'm grateful that the Deputy has given me some notice this morning of his question, so I am in a position to answer it now. Essentially, yes, share transfer properties do pose some challenges in relation to trying to control ownership of property, because they're not immovable property, they're movable property, and that creates some difficulties in controlling transfer of ownership of those shares. But having looked at the Control of Housing and Work law, in my view, Articles 15 and 20 do provide some ability for the Minister to impose some conditions in advance on the ownership of those properties. As far as I'm aware, they haven't been tested before, but my preliminary view is that they could be used in these circumstances to impose controls right from the start and specify perhaps that these are not to be share transfer property developments. So I've also given consideration to whether or not use of these powers might result in a form of discrimination on the basis of race, or direct or indirect discrimination on the basis of race, because it would mean that a certain racial profile has perhaps more access to these properties than others. But in my view, I think the provisions of the discrimination law are sufficient to discount the possibility of a successful claim. So my preliminary view is that our existing laws do allow the sort of controls that are contemplated in Senator Mezek's proposition as amended.
Thank you, sir. Thank you
very much. Deputy Pinnell.
Thank you very much, sir. As indicated by the proposer at the beginning of his opening remarks, we conducted very helpful and constructive discussions about the proposition with Senator Mezek, and I just wanted to thank him on behalf of the Council of Ministers for accepting the amendment. Thank you, sir.
Very much. Deputy Ash.
Thank you, sir. I'm happy to follow Deputy Pinnell there and echo those sentiments. I've enjoyed working with Senator Mezek, not only on this, but in my capacity with Andium and SOJDC when he was Housing Minister, sir. I would say that we actually shared many, well, we had common ground on many issues, sir. We both felt people should have houses. I felt they should pay for them. He didn't. Sorry, sir. I jest there, sir. I don't want the JEP to run with that story and Senator Mezek be swept to power with a massive common mandate. No, we shared a lot on this, sir, and that's why I'm glad that he has brought this forward. But I do think, sir, and it's one of the reasons I wish to speak on this topic, because it's an important issue. It's one of the most important issues we have that face us in this Assembly. Obviously, many of our important issues have been swept to the back slightly by not even slightly, majorly by the COVID issue. But housing is a major issue, sir. And there's a general acknowledgement that we have a shortage of housing and that something needs to be done about it. Now, this will probably have cued much sage nodding of virtual heads. There are also two much loved solutions that are put out there, sir. Firstly, one of the solutions that people love to put forward is to stop people coming in. Stop people coming in, stop immigration, freeze population, we're fine. This is obviously much loved by the populists, sir, because they know it plays very well with Headley and Snow down at the Petanque Club. But in theory, it is much harder to do. And even if we froze the population here, we are still very, very short of housing. The second, which is perhaps a more obvious one, sir, is to build more accommodation. There, of course, lies your answer, sir. It's blindingly obvious, staring us in the face. Off we go then, problem solved. Although it isn't, is it? And this is where Senator Mezek and myself shared a lot of common ground. Because when we try to build anything, anywhere, anytime, and we've seen this with the amount of places that Andium could be building on now, but are still stymied in doing so, all the state's members suddenly receive 5 or 6 communications stating that I can't believe that Senator Structure is putting up this monstrosity in St Somewheres. And bingo, sir, we end up with gridlock. The states get cold feet. Now, if this housing problem is to be solved, it will need more things such as this that are brought by Senator Mezek. It will need this assembly, in short, sir, to show true leadership. The sort that can make you unpopular, can make the assembly unpopular. The sort of leadership, sir, that we saw in the past when we flooded Queen's Valley. 22,000 signatures were against that, sir. 22,000. And that was in the days when one needed a paper and pen to sign a petition, not merely press a button. But people had the courage to make that decision then, that I think few would now doubt has benefited the island hugely. And in an ironic sort of way has also created a tremendous spot in replacement for what was already a great beauty spot. So that's what we need, sir. We need leadership, proper leadership. Not the leadership to lead a mini revolution of keyboard warriors opposing any substantial change. No, proper leadership. We have seen outbreaks of that courage in the Assembly this term, sir, most notably with COVID and the hospital, to name but two. In the hospital's case, it will require still more if that holy grail that has eluded our predecessors is to fall into the island's grasp. This move by Senator Mezek, as I said, sir, is an attempt by him to make housing more available, which I and SOJDC and the Minister, and I hope the Council of Ministers, have all discussed prior to this being bought. My problem now is that many will think, okay, lovely, that's sorted. Well, it isn't, and it won't be unless it's taken on. And to that end, I was very heartened by what Deputy Labby, the new Housing Minister, said yesterday about how he intends to do that. If we look at what Senator Mezek has brought to us, one of his main bits that I agree with him, and I was happy to agree with it, but it really doesn't cut much ice, and that's the non-purchase of properties by foreigners, for want of a better word, non-locals, to be rented out, because it's still, much of our housing is not rented out by non-locals, but by locals, and it won't stop local purchasers buying it and renting out these properties. And if you're one of the people having to pay large, high rents, and you're shelling out in excess of £1,000 a month for a one-bedroom flat, do you think people are sitting there consoling themselves with the fact that it's not going to a Vlad, it's going to a Vibert? I don't think they care less. It's merely a populist move by the Assembly. It solves nothing as far as the rental prices, I don't think. It's just a nice to have. If you want to look at sky-high rents, have a look at the retail sector. So are they caused by foreign buy-to-lets? Not really. They're caused by people who have owned those properties for years and years and years and have benefited greatly from doing it. The blame of the foreigner is an easy one, sir, if we wish to deflect difficulties nearer to home that we have to tackle. In closing, sir, I would say that the former housing minister and myself, I'm so pleased that he accepted our amendment, because as he said himself in his speech, it widens the scope available from what he had set out initially. And this allows, as the current housing minister said yesterday, us to look at real change in a development such as this. First-time buyers, shared equity, downsizing. It opens up a whole different gamut of possibilities, and I think it's really something we should do. If we do it properly, sir, we could have a truly mixed project with the backing it deserves from this assembly, sir. It could become an iconic development from Jersey, and I hope it is. Thank you, sir.
What about Deputy Ash? Deputy St Mary, you have a question for the Attorney General?
Thank you, sir. And it rather follows on from the answer he gave to the to Deputy Young, who rather stole my lines as far as the original question was concerned. I thank the attorney for his reply, but could he just clarify that it relates to the basic question as to the ability to prevent a foreign owner acquiring one of these properties? Could he just clarify that under the Articles of Association as are now in force, no such restriction could take place, and it will therefore mean that the articles will need to be amended to prevent a foreign entity acquiring a unit? And secondly, could you perhaps elaborate on the point that the articles could be so amended to prevent an onward sale, as to which in fact SOJDC would have little control, and on what basis would SOJDC be able to satisfy themselves that there is no foreign involvement in any such onward transfer? I'd appreciate his views on both those points, sir.
Are you able to assist, Mr. Attorney?
Yes. I think the questioner slightly misunderstood my answer. The powers in Articles 15 and 20 of the Control of Housing and Work Law are directed at giving a jurisdiction for the Minister to impose conditions on ownership of property in the first instance. And those powers could be used to impose a condition that the property is not to be owned by someone who is not resident or doesn't have entitled or licensed status in Jersey. In terms of whether they could further be used to go on to amend the articles, I'm not sure whether that's necessary, in terms that there is a ministerial condition that sets out that the property is to be subject to a ministerial condition that it is to be owned by someone with entitled or licensed status. And there is a supplemental power in Article 20, which I think can also be used to similar effect. They haven't, to my knowledge, they haven't been used in Jersey previously. So I think we would need to devote further thought to how exactly they would be used in relation to this particular development. But one option is to say that the property is not to be owned by way of share ownership, but is to be owned by way of a flying freehold under the 1991 law. That is another possible way of achieving the object of this particular proposition. So I think my answer is basically, in principle, I think that there are powers under Articles 15 and 20 of the Control of Housing and Work Law, which can be used to achieve the effect of this particular proposition. But I think there would need to be some work done as to how exactly they would be used in this particular case. As I understand it, this is an in principle proposition, and it requires whether it's the Minister or the Council of Ministers to come back with a report. It may be that this point can be dealt with in more detail in that report. So I hope that that answers the Deputy's questions.
Yes, sir. Thank you. I thank the Attorney General for his reply, which does indeed highlight the fact that further work does need to be done on this to arrive at what the State Assembly is likely to approve.
Are you now making a speech, Deputy St Mary?
No, sir. I thank the Attorney for his reply.
Thank you very much indeed. Conor St Helier.
Thank you, sir. I realise that this proposition before us is on the relatively narrow subject of who should be able to buy new properties that are built on the waterfront. However, given that the Senator in his opening remarks referred to the housing needs of the island, he referred to the risk that profits from the Jersey Development Company will be funneled or siphoned. I don't recall which word he used. Those profits will be passed elsewhere. And he also said that the public are generally unimpressed by the waterfront development so far. I hope that I will be given some latitude in the comments that I wish to make on the proposition. First of all, sir, and this is something that I was pursuing through question time yesterday, it is inescapable that the parish of St Helier is being asked to take on the majority of the housing needs of the island, both now and in the coming decade. And that is a matter which makes, of course, perfect sense. I have said this often in the Assembly. It makes sense because it reduces the need for travel. People will be close to the schools and their workplaces if they live on the waterfront. And that, of course, is good for the island. It saves us building on greenfield sites, because generally the density can be achieved on the waterfront will be higher than in the rural parishes. Therefore, preserving the island's countryside and coastline for everyone to enjoy. And that's, of course, not just the people who are lucky enough to live in those places, but those who are living in town, who are living on the waterfront, who want to enjoy an unspoilt island when they visit. So I think the caveat which I always make, and I think it's important I make it today, is that it is only right that St Helier is asked to take on, I won't call it a burden, because I think people are good for town. They add to the vibrancy and the life of the town 24/7. But if St Helier is taking on all these thousands of extra units, even on the waterfront, then there must be that compensatory provision of open space, community and leisure facilities, all the things that these St Helier residents are going to need to enjoy their new homes. Parking, of course, will also be important, and it's a matter of concern to me that increasingly these developments are pricing their parking out of the hands of the people who buy the units. The parking will be an expensive add-on, which many of the people who buy these flats, whatever the tenure, will be unable to afford. And that is a matter that I believe the island must return to when the long-awaited transport strategies are presented to the states for debate. I also mentioned yesterday, sir, my belief that the coordination of these new housing developments in town being left in the hands of the Regeneration Steering Group on which I sit is not achieving the holistic approach to the planning of the whole town and the funding of these kind of amenities that we need, and that I will be coming forward to the states with a proposal that we have an urban renewal or regeneration body which brings together all the key players, including planning. And of course, the planning minister is not even given a seat at the table of the Regeneration Steering Group. And I think it's vital going forward that these homes in the waterfront, whatever their tenure, give their occupants the full range of services that they would expect to have a comparable quality of life to those people who live in other parts of the island. And I can't help but mention, sir, in the light of the election of the chair of PPC and my questions to the candidates, that it is ironic that whatever category of units the residents on the next phase of the waterfront are, they will have less influence at the ballot box than if they were buying properties in, for example, St Mary. I'm not sure, sir, that I agree with the notion that waterfront properties should be mixed up in the way that the Senator is clearly hoping for. He's removed his requirement that 50% should be for social rented, because I think that the key point is that the money that is made from the development needs to be used in the best possible way. And if the Jersey Development Company can build more homes by allocating the units in certain ways, then surely more homes must be the key criteria that we select. The constituents that I talk to, sir, are not so concerned about whether they have a view of the sea, about whether they have a property on the waterfront. They're much more concerned about how warm their rental homes are, whether they're watertight, whether they're big enough, whether the rooms are big enough, whether they have parking, whether they have a garden or balcony or access to a park. And these are the key things. And the more homes we build that tick those particular boxes, the better. And I wouldn't want us to be in a position where we are building fewer homes just because we have to provide some of them in a position which is expensive to build on. I also want to refer to the two other remarks made by the Senator. One was that the development company might funnel their profits elsewhere. And I have to say that I think one of the functions of the Regeneration Steering Group that needs to be more widely broadcast is that it is that body which is responsible for allocating the profits of the Jersey Development Company. And the offer, which I mentioned in a question to the Planning Minister yesterday, that up to £70 million from the waterfront development and the Esplanade Quarter development should be going into regeneration, is a matter which I believe must be pursued, because there are few members in the States today who actually remember the Planning Minister making that promise to the Assembly. And I think that is a matter of concern, and it's something that, again, needs to be refreshed. I also can't agree with the comment that the majority of islanders are unimpressed with how the waterfront is developing. It is a work in progress, but many parts of the waterfront are really very fine. And I think certainly the more recent developments, the financial services buildings, the new square that has been provided, Trenton Square, and the plans for the future, which will have a range of cultural and community and amenity spaces, are very exciting indeed. So, and I don't think we should share in any kind of view that things are not going well. I think things are moving in the right direction, even if some of the initial buildings that were put on the waterfront, and I won't name them to spare their blushes, but clearly those do need to be reconsidered in future. So I think it's a good proposition now that it's been amended, and it is something I can support, but I do want to raise these concerns so that they're not forgotten and so that they are pursued by the various ministers and bodies responsible for housing on the island. Thank you, sir.
Thank you very much. Conrad, Beverly Higgins.
Thank you, sir. I should be supporting this proposition, but I believe it doesn't go far enough. Foreign direct investment by overseas investors is and has been a problem. It has caused property prices to be at least 30% higher than they would otherwise be, as foreign demand is being added to domestic demand. It also causes rental prices to be higher than they need be, as the tenant is covering the purchases, borrowing, maintenance, costs and profit. They're also making social housing to be more expensive due to the state's requirement that social housing rents should be 90% of the market rate, which in turn causes income support for rent to be higher than it would otherwise be. I think that the 90% needs to be looked at and should be looked at before the next election. However, foreign investment purchases are only part of the problem, as we also have internal investors, perhaps some of our 2-1Es, who we give special tax status to, who may be purchasing numerous properties and building up substantial property portfolios to rent out. And we will not know this until we have our digital property register. Remember, every property they purchase means less properties at affordable prices that are available to purchase by local residents wanting to buy their own homes. Now, I have no problem with these investors investing themselves in constructing new build homes, for those who wish to rent, but oppose them buying up homes in other developments for purchase, which they then rent out, because that is not helping the situation. And just two other comments. Deputy Ash mentioned that the retail market is due not to foreign investors, but to historical local owners. But the truth of the matter is we don't know, and we will not know until we have the digital property register that the States has agreed should be established by the end of this year. If the government doesn't get its skates on and treat this as a priority, we won't have it by the end of the year, and their failure to do so will become an election issue. Just one other comment, and that is to do with the AG's comment regarding discrimination. I'd point out that Guernsey has a two-tier housing market, one open to all and one restricted to locals, so I don't believe that would be insurmountable. I'm also sure that with Jersey's inventiveness, we can come up with, even if the existing ownership schemes for these properties don't deal with the matter, we can come up with an alternative which could perhaps achieve what we want. Anyway, so I'll leave it at that. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Deputy Morell.
Thank you, sir. Just a question, really, and then maybe a comment. It was I'd be really pleased if Senator Mezek, in his response, could just confirm his kind of definition of foreign. In my mind, it means any corporation which is not Jersey. I just wanted to check that is what he means. So, you know, other Channel Islands, the UK would be deemed as foreign. I just wanted to get that confirmation from the senator if possible. Just another brief comment. It's clear in the report that when he was housing minister, Senator Mezek wasn't consulted about the plans for the waterfront. And I remember the planning minister also saying that the first he knew of the plans for the waterfront was when they were published in the JEP. And really, it's just a comment to say that this lack of consultation is appalling by the part of the SOJDC. It shows a lack of being joined up. And I think one aspect is in culture is talk of the National Gallery, yet we have no known need for such a thing at the moment, and we have an art strategy going through government at the moment, should be published in a few months' time, and that would be the place to decide whether or not a National Gallery is needed, not just because SOJDC decides that it's needed or the Regeneration Steering Group decide that it's needed. So a much more joined up approach, and I'd appreciate it if the Treasury Minister would ensure that that is the case. But my question for Senator Mezek is exactly what does he mean by foreign? Thank you, sir.
Thank you very much, Deputy St. Peter.
Thank you very much, sir. It is clear, given the overwhelming evidence we have today, that we need more housing, especially social rental and affordable housing. I fully and totally support this, and let me say at the outset, I'll be supporting this amended proposition. What we also know, sir, is that we have finite resources, finite land. We are due an island plan to determine how we can best use our land. However, we should make sure we maximise the returns from these cherished assets. The land on the waterfront has the highest value in Jersey, and the subsequent potential sale value realised from these residential units will reflect that. I feel, sir, whilst Senator Mezek argues very well to the contrary, that we should be looking to, and please forgive this expression, sweat that asset without compromising on the planned outcome and the overall benefit to the island, and ensure a significant amount of the profits are carved out to develop affordable and social rental homes elsewhere. Now, sir, if only for comparative purposes, I would like to see that option modelled in the Council of Ministers report, not just for us and the constables from Helier who expressed similar concerns, but all islanders who need to be assured our money is being well spent. The objective, and let me be clear, is to try and achieve more homes for the same financial investment on our limited space. Thank you, sir.
Thank you very much, Deputy Chief Minister.
Yes, thank you, sir. Just very briefly, I just wanted to say, although I don't always agree with the everything that the the proposer, Senator Mesek, says, I do thank him all of the time. I do thank him for his constructive approach on this, and also we've come to a mutual position, which I hope is deemed a constructive way. And it does show that obviously, as members, if members do produce propositions, if we can actually work together on these, sometimes we can actually come to, sometimes it's a compromise, but hopefully we've come to a position and then is a constructive way forward. So I do thank him for his approach on that, and hopefully we will continue in that same spirit. What I was also just going to say is just in relation to Part A, just to re-emphasise the point, the reason we didn't have any problem with it particularly was that essentially it had been implemented through SOJDC back in August 2019, as is noted in the report to the amendments. Is consistent with concerns that were raised in the last elections. We probably should be doing more in that area, at least trying to understand it, but it is a start. And again, obviously, to re-emphasise the point that really because of COVID, obviously, in which we're still dealing with, it has caused a lot of delays and kind of a number of the areas that we would love to be addressing. Hopefully, as we progress through the year, we can start refocusing a greater attention on those areas. But I just really want to say there's a couple of points to thank Senator Mesek for his approach on this, and obviously, certainly said we'll be supporting the amended proposition. Thank you, sir.
Thank you very much, Chief Minister. Does any other member wish to speak on the proposition? No other member wishes to speak on the proposition?
So can I speak? I'm having trouble getting in to my
Deputy Tanya, that's you, Deputy Tanya, is it? Did you wish to speak?
Yes, sir.
Deputy Tanya. Yes. Yes, Deputy.
Thank you, sir. So I'll keep it relatively brief. Sorry, sir, having some technical problems here. I'm just going to go somewhere a bit quieter. Thank you, sir. I wanted to talk about the issue of from buy-to-lets by giving a tangible example. There was a fire in St Albans in December last year, just before Christmas. It was particularly bad timing, not just in terms of the seasonal aspect of it, but also the fact that it happened during a pandemic, which further complicated what would have already been a bad situation for 6 households who were renting in a block of flats down there. And the block of flats in question was owned by a Guernsey company, a trust company. And one of the issues is not just, with buy-to-lets in general, is not just the fact that it has an economic impact on the island and that profits are going out of the island, which could be remaining in the island. It's actually the fact that there isn't that relationship that you might expect between landlord and tenancy in terms of the accountability. And I raised this during question time, sir, with the new housing minister. And one of the issues that they're facing still is that you'd normally expect some kind of duty of care between a landlord and a tenant. And indeed, the new housing minister said that he owns property in the UK and he likes to try and keep the same tenants there for as long as possible. And there's an incentive to be a good landlord because you want to keep the tenants there. And I'd suggest that it's exactly the same in a small island. If you're going to come face to face with your tenants, or you're a tenant and you're going to come face to face with your landlord when you're walking down King Street, or if you're going to church, or if you're going to the parish fete, you want to make sure that you're doing the right thing, hopefully because that's the way you operate anyway, but also because there's a social accountability there and a social interaction. That simply doesn't exist when you're dealing with a faceless company that, as I think Deputy Morell raised the question, yes, it would include Guernsey companies in my mind, And I've always found it slightly strange that we have a residential qualification for living in Jersey and for buying property and living in it, but yet we have lots of people who, for whatever reason, can't yet buy their own home. They might not be able to afford the deposit. You've got people who haven't yet got their residential qualifications, but they're very much firmly Jersey residents. They might have been here for 5 to 9 years and made their homes here and give a lot socially, economically as well, contribute in many ways to our communities. Yet they can live here, but they can't buy their own properties. But somebody or a construct, a company, a corporation that doesn't have any presence in Jersey or indeed any interest in Jersey can buy up property and then rent it to people who do live here, but who, for whatever reason, are not allowed or cannot afford to otherwise own their own properties. And it seems a complete contradiction. So I think this is moving in the right direction, and I hope it will focus the minds of ministers and everybody concerned about how we deal with issues of housing. And these are homes we're talking about, homes for people, whether or not they end up owning those properties or whether they rent them. They are homes. We shouldn't simply be thinking about assets. And I was disappointed by the comments of the Constable of St Helier, and I've heard them previously, and they're effectively saying, you know, the waterfront is too good for social housing. And I think he said, if we can realise more money from the waterfront and then use it to spend elsewhere, we can produce much more housing elsewhere, but not in prime locations. And I think that's, I find that personally disgusting as an attitude, if anyone does espouse that, because actually we should be saying that things like the waterfront, things with a view, which are sought after, and of course they have a premium value economically, that's because they also have a premium social value and social status. And I would say, what's wrong with giving poor people, poor families, a sea view? You know, I think it's really important that we do have quality builds right across the island and that we have mixed communities, and it becomes very divisive when we have any kind of, I think, ghettoisation potentially going on. And I've certainly dealt with many constituency cases as well as social interactions, for example, in Le Marais flats, and it has to be said that they're remarkably well built. You know, those high-rise, which may not look particularly attractive from the outside, are, I think, both functional and they're well built, they're spacious, and they've got sea views. And why shouldn't they? You know, people are paying nowadays, especially, quite high rents to live, and often these are people who are hardworking as well, and they may not be unemployed people. And even if they are, you know, that's still money that is theirs that's going out paying for rents which are quite high and which would probably get them premium places where they're living elsewhere. So to get back to my initial story, is that about the foreign buy-to-lets and the St Albans case, is that you have a scenario where there's a fire and the landlords basically say, I'm sorry, you're out on the street now, you're going to have to house yourselves. Our responsibility under the law is simply that we don't charge you rent, but we've got absolutely no legal responsibility to provide you with alternative accommodation. You're out on your ear, mate, even though you might have been living here 15 or 20 years. And I think that's a disgraceful way to treat anyone, but that's what the law is. But you'd think that's probably not going to happen if you've got a local landlord who knows the people who's living in his or her apartment, and that there's a duty of care there as well. So of course there is legal responsibility, but I think there's social responsibility, and this is about what kind of island do we want to see, what kind of island do we want to live in. And I do echo the words of the new Culture Minister, that it's really important that the waterfront is vibrant and that it isn't simply what we might have seen. I don't know if there are any South Park aficionados out there, but they parodied it quite well about what can happen in a part of town where there seeks to be gentrification, but in fact it's not done very well, and in fact it just becomes a part of town which nobody really wants to go to. It's just another generic branded UK or US offering which has no soul of its own, and which will be shunned by the spirit of the community because they don't feel part of it, sir. So I think it's really important that the key players there are not simply Treasury, and it's outstanding that it's crazy that in the past the Housing Minister, the Environment Minister, the cultural representatives of the government haven't been kept in the loop of making what's got to be one of the key areas in St Helier and at the heart of our island, sir. So I do obviously welcome this proposition as well, sir.
Thank you very much, Deputy. Does any other member wish to speak on the proposition? No other member wishes to speak? Then I close the debate and call upon Senator Mesek to respond.
Thank you, sir, and thank you to all the members who've spoken in this debate. And I won't do a very lengthy closing speech because I think some really good points have been made, and the questions to the Attorney General at the start were helpful as well, just to underline that Part A certainly is practical and can be done. And in response to Deputy Morell's question about the definition of foreign buy-to-let in this, there's no legal definition, so it's about applying what definition meets our aims here. And from my perspective, the aim certainly does mean to exclude any off-island investor. You could perhaps say off-island investors rather than foreign investors, if that's easier to understand the point there. And I totally agree with what he said as well about the lack of consultation here. The first I heard about this proposal was when it was on the front page of the JEP, and I was Housing Minister at the time, reading an article saying we're going to deliver 1,000 new homes on that site, and the media are asking me for my response, and me having to say, well, I haven't got a clue what's actually on the table here, which is undemocratic and unacceptable in my view, which is why I think it's important to have this proposition on the table that requires the government to go and produce some work to outline what housing need specifically will be addressed in this development. And when they come back with that report, if we don't like it, we can bring subsequent propositions to the States Assembly to provide other directions to them instead, and that's a more democratic way forward. I thought that the speech from Deputy Ash at the start was particularly good, and he made, I think he identified a lot of the right issues here, and in particular he spoke about the issue of population policy. And I see this all the time, people saying, oh, that housing would be solved in Jersey if only we had a population cap, and that's complete nonsense. We could go to net zero growth in immigration or population from inward migration today, and we would still have an increasing housing need over the next 10 years. So there is no sense in believing that actually we can hold back on housing developments and simply institute a population policy and everything will magically find its own equilibrium and everyone will have the home they need. That's just not the case. It's more complicated than that. And that is why it's right, when we have an opportunity on government-owned land with a government-owned developer, that it is not purely about raising money. It is about addressing specific housing need. We have all the statistics we need to know what that need is going to be. The Objective Assessment of Housing Needs report provides a really helpful breakdown on that, and that examines different immigration scenarios as well. So gives you different models to work from. We've got all the statistics we need. And so I think it's disappointing when I hear comments like that from Deputy St Peter, and the Constable of St Helier raised this as well, about making money on this prime site so that we can deliver homes elsewhere. I think it misses the point for two reasons. Firstly, it is possible to build housing that's counterproductive. If we are building homes purely for investors to profiteer out of and get as much money as possible out of it, you can end up contributing to rental inflation, because whilst we're spending time delivering on that scheme, we're not spending time delivering an alternative affordable scheme at that moment. And whilst there's a need, you'll end up with people moving into those homes because they simply have no other option, paying through the roof for their rent when they can't really afford it. And there are negative economic consequences from allowing that. Whereas if our focus is purely on the more affordable options, we mitigate that. So it's an opportunity, and an opportunity we should take. And more importantly, it misunderstands how we fund the building of social housing and affordable housing elsewhere. And it simply makes no sense when interest rates are so low to say we're going to build a big profit generating scheme and use those profits as grants to build affordable housing elsewhere. Why would you do that when it costs so little to borrow? It's a wasted opportunity, because they'll build homes for affordable purchase or for social rent that will make money. The government acts as guarantor, and the banks love giving money in that situation because it's safe. They know they'll get it back. They'll plan to pay it back over several decades, no problem. To do it on a grant-based model is a waste of opportunity and a waste of time. And I would say to Deputy of St Peter and Constable of St Helier that my experience when I was Housing Minister was in my engagements with the social housing providers, they were not coming to me to beg for grants to deliver new schemes. They were coming to me to beg for sites, places to build their homes, because they knew that they can get the financing to do the development. They just need the place to do it. That was where they found their difficulty. So I think that the contributions from those members misunderstood how we can actually deliver more affordable housing. But the Constable of St Helier's contribution was particularly disappointing because he just frankly misquoted me on multiple occasions. I think it was on 2 occasions he referred to me saying that islanders were unimpressed by the waterfront. Just didn't say that, sir. What I said is that most people would say that the waterfront doesn't meet its potential. That's a different thing. And by the sounds of it, Constable St Helier agrees that it doesn't meet its potential, because he says it's getting better over time and will continue to get better over time. Well, great. I hope that's the case. But that doesn't mean we're coming from a different perspective there. And he was wrong, I think, to attribute those words to me. He then also said I'd referred to the SOJDC funneling money elsewhere, and funnel was the key word there. And again, that is a misquote. I did not use the word funnel when referring to the SOJDC and it using the profits it makes to cross-subsidise other things like public realm improvements. When I spoke of the SOJDC, I said cross-subsidise, not funnel. When I said funnel, I was referring to off-island investors who funnel money out of the island for it never to come back here again, leave here, often by putting people in rental stress, taking out the money that they earn through their hard work every day to somebody who will never know who they are or what they do with that money, and it'll never come back and benefit Jersey by swirling round our economy. It just leaves instead. So I wish he'd paid more attention there, because he'd have understood the points I was making there better. Deputy Higgins said that this proposition doesn't go far enough, and I agree with him on principle. I think we do need to take much tougher action across the board on these issues. But the reason I've gone for this proposition quite simply is because it felt like low-hanging fruit. Because we own the SOJDC, we can tell them what to do. And we don't need to change any laws to enable us to do that. We don't need to introduce legislation which bans foreign buy-to-let investing in this scheme. We can just tell the SOJDC, don't sell any to foreign buy-to-let investors, and they'll have to do that. yes, so work does need to go across the wider housing market, but in accepting this proposition today on a big upcoming scheme, we can make sure that it meets the needs of islanders and we get the most out of this opportunity. And that's why I was pleased to bring this proposition and accept the amendment from the Treasury Minister and Assistant Treasury Minister, and I hope that this Assembly will now back it wholeheartedly. And so I call for the appel.
Thank you very much, Senator. I ask the greffier to place a voting link into the chat. Open the voting and ask members to vote. Members have had the opportunity of casting their votes. Then I ask the greffier to close the voting. The proposition has been adopted. 39 votes pour, 1 vote contre, no abstentions in the link, and a further 1 vote pour in the chat. Contre is asked for.
Deputy Guida voted contre.
Very well. We now come on to the draft COVID-19 Island Plan Jersey Regulations P168, lodged by the Minister for the Environment. The main responder will be the Chair of the Environment, Housing and Infrastructure Scrutiny Panel, and I ask the greffier to read the citation.
Draft COVID-19 Island Plan Jersey Regulations 2000. The states make these regulations under Article 2 of the COVID-19 Enabling Provisions Jersey Law 2020.
Minister.
Sir, could I ask, I did lodge an amendment, could I ask the to be taken as amended, please, sir?
Well, you can, but the amendment was to the individual articles and what we're dealing with are the principles. But thank you for indicating to members that when we come to deal with the articles, you'll take them as amended.
Thank you very much, sir. Members will know that the main task that falls within my ministerial team in the time this Parliament has left before the elections is the Island Plan. The work has proceeded apace by the officers team. An incredible amount has been done since members will recall our in-committee debates which we had in July. There we made it plain as part of that work in order to be able to deal with the processing of the draft Island Plan, it would have to be done in a different way, and that is defined in law. And what these regulations do is to enable that process to happen. And it's using the emergency powers to change the key provisions in the planning and building law. Now, I don't know how long it will. Members may be concerned that these look quite complex, but I'm going to try and take a simplistic approach if I can to try and reduce the amount of time. But of course, if members want to go into more detail, I'm prepared to. I think what I'd like to cover is why we need them, which I've covered, what the regulations do and what effect it has on public and states members, and indeed the minister's role themselves. And just to show, of course, these are finite and temporary changes, because the changes, the underlying law for future island plans will remain, but this enables us to do this changed procedure for this COVID circumstances. Under the current rules, an initial draft plan is published for public consultation well before the draft island plan is lodged formally with the greffier, and that then at that point states members are able to lodge amendments, and then before the debate. And of course that timescale cannot be, and so the regulations here see an initial draft island plan lodged in the states at the same time that it's published for public consultation, and we are now weeks away from that. The latest target I've been given is mid-March. So in other words, it will be a plan for a shorter period, which is 2022 to 2024. And of course, current legislation proposed 2011 to 2020, which is why the current plan expires. And then, of course, it will be 2025 to 2034 for the next one after that. But one thing I want to be clear on, this will be a comprehensive island plan, and it will provide a framework for, I think, for very much the longer term in a number of areas. What effect will these regulations have? Well, they won't affect the ability of the public to engage with and submit representations to the island plan. That absolutely remains. And it will have no effect on the ability for the necessity for an independent examination in public. In other words, a planning inquiry before an inspectors. And on the current information I have, there's likely to be a team of inspectors because of the scope of the plan and the timescale. And of course, it's likely now, it's difficult to predict whether that will be virtually or physically, but either way, the preparations with the inspectors are well advanced to how that can be done in either event. The current island plan order prescribes a minimum period of not less than 8 weeks for the public, and here we are, in fact, under these regulations, we're proposing 12 weeks, and so if you like, that is an improvement. And also, I think for states members, as I explained, under the current law, states members would lodge their amendments to the draft plan right at the end of the process, after we've gone through public consultation and what have you. Now, then, states amendments would be lodged at the same time, and so there's a twin-tracked approach. But of course, and so that will actually increase the time that members have under the current law. At the moment, it increases. At the current time, it's 4 weeks for amendments, and of course, under this arrangement, it would be 12 weeks. And so that will provide a process leading up to the planning inquiry. Now, obviously, I want to, things are likely to change at that point, either as a result of things said or in the inquiry or information coming out, and indeed the inspector's report. And there does need to be procedure, and these regulations apply for that, provide for that, for amendments then to put forward further amendments once the independent planning inspector has published the report. And so members will get, if you like, three opportunities to take their views during the public consultation in the 12 weeks, during the public inquiry, and after the inspector's report. And the law sets down the timescales, which has been the most tricky part of these legislations to get right. And that is why I'm grateful for the work we've been able to do with the scrutiny panel. I thank the chairman for that, and the officers and the legal advice, because it's been quite tricky to try and provide an accommodation there that is practical, because the island plan debate has to be manageable, and I'm grateful for the greffier as well, who has given the team an enormous amount of help to try and produce workable proposals. Now, for the minister, there is this provision that the minister can lodge an amendment after the publication of the inspector's report, and not later than 2 weeks before a debate. And that allows the minister to respond to the inspector's report. So, for example, if an inspector says something should not be done, or something should not recommended, then the minister can at that point remove it. And now there is also a provision which is a very exceptional one, which is about a provision for, if you like, dealing with unforeseen issues that emerge during a debate, where the minister can put forward an amendment with the permission of the states. And this is really designed to iron out what you might call, I think, technical difficulties, because the island plan debate can get quite complex, because obviously the amendments that members have are on the table for debate, and we will then have probably amendments to amendments, and sometimes with the complexity of the island plan, sometimes there is a danger that mistakes can be made, and that provision would enable that to be sorted out. So I think that's the very, very high level. Obviously, the scrutiny panel have published a report. We've discussed it with the panel at length. There is no, the island plan process will be comprehensive. It will deal with the report produced by the panel. Really, if you like, give us the flavour of the issues that are going to be coming out of the plan, and so I think it's a good, helpful, if you like, lead in to the publication of the plan. So with opportunities there are for all of the amendments I've said, and the opportunity for members to bring amendments. I think that the plan that's likely to come forward, which will deal with affordable housing, the use of public land, supporting parish communities, affordable homes, protecting our coast, countryside and marine environment, a plan for town, protecting public open space and play space for children, and particularly infrastructure and our hospital, that vital project. And obviously, as members have said, dealing with climate change. So it is an ambition, but the team have done fantastic work. I'm delighted with the work that's been done so far, and I will promise to see this through. So I think there's no escaping it. These regulations are necessary, because they provide, without it, there is no legal framework to do what we agreed to do in the in-committee debates and adopt the interim island plan. And so I ask members, please, I make the debate regulations in principle, and as I say, I've tried to keep it simple to save time, but I will respond to detailed members' points if they have them. Thank you, sir.
Well, are the principles seconded?
Yes, sir.
Yes, sir.
Colin Brillard.
Thank you, sir. I commend the Minister, sir, for bringing this 3-year bridging plan to the Assembly, and in the light of COVID restrictions would appear to be the right thing to do. We must, however, be cognizant that there is a real risk that not much will be achieved in this condensed period of 3 years. My panel considers, sir, that there may be a significant scaling back from a 10-year plan, and I would ask the Minister which areas he would think most at risk. One of these risks is that it may be perceived as a plan driven by government without the support of the general public and key stakeholders, and they are vital to delivering the outcomes of the island plan. It's evident from the panel's findings that meaningful consultation and clear communication with stakeholders is key to securing the plan's success. It's crucial, sir, therefore, that the Council of Ministers puts forward a plan that states members and the public can have faith will successfully deliver on its aims in the short time frame. It's clear that prioritising and addressing the shortage of affordable homes will be a key element in the Bridging Island plan, and we are reassured to note there is some degree of known certainty within planning assumptions for this element of the plan. Approval of this proposition will, sir, enable the proposed changes in process that are required to lodge and debate the bridging plan. And whilst it's appreciated that an extended lodging period of 12 weeks will be provided for, there are concerns in respect of public consultation running at the same time as the lodging period. This may be unsatisfactory to states members who may wish to bring amendments based on feedback gained from public consultation. The panel's review, sir, also found that there was a lack of clarity and assurance as to how a shorter Bridging Island plan will interlink with the subsequent 10-year plan to ensure the sustainable longevity of developments as they go through the design and build lifespan of the project. I refer members, sir, to our review SR3 2021, which makes a number of recommendations on page 9 in the interests of providing some positive feedback and help in mitigating any potential implications should members agree to adopt this proposition and the subsequent draft Bridging Island plan. Thank you, sir.
Very much. Does any other member wish to speak on the principles? No other member wishes to speak on the principles? Then I close the debate and call upon the Minister to respond.
Thank you, sir, and I thank the CONITAB for his support, obviously, but really important questions. Starting with the issue of public consultation, it is fundamental that we manage to achieve it. That has to be, no plan can succeed, and I personally would not expect it to be approved by the state's members if the situation arises where for any reasons where we fail to achieve that. Now we've got an excellent team. We've got a very well-resourced team, thankfully, to the budgets provided. We've got external partners, so we are not in the usual position where one is having to cut our cloth, as it were. I think we can use every opportunity, every way we can of being able to engage in the public, we will. And this is where I'm strongly relying on our comms team, on all the expert partners and so on. And I will, as Minister, have to monitor that, as I'm doing already on the work so far. And I ask members to have faith with myself and my ministerial team, my colleagues, that if we feel that that is not being successful, we will make sure we put that right before things go advance too far. Now, I don't believe that when you ask about areas of, you asked about areas of risk. I don't believe there's a risk that there will be key subjects omitted from the plan. If anything, I think the work has been very comprehensive, and I think that links into the other point the CONITAB made about how the plans for the 3-year period will match with longer term. And I'm very clear from, again, the work I've seen, that those policies that are coming forward and the work being done is set in the context as well for the longer term. For example, in the case of housing, even though it's a 3-year plan, what we've had to do is to adopt all the targets and the policy drafts for 5 years. And the reason for that is logical, that the cycle to, as it were, from identifying a site to actually procuring and seeing that housing implemented is certainly longer than 5 years, sorry, 3 years. So that's why we've adopted as a 5 year. Also, when it comes to issues like the infrastructure and provisions, where we've taken a much longer view, because you can't avoid issues like water supply and mineral supply and all those type of things, are dealing with them in a 3 year period. So those are examples, but obviously in population, we've had to make the best informed planning assumption. And we may, if migration exceeds the actual assumption numbers, then we will underachieve. But if there's less, then we will overachieve. And of course, the plan at the moment provides for the draft plan, as we published, as you know, we published this document. I forget what we called it now. It's a strategy statement. I think we published it a couple of months ago, and that information is all set out in full in that document. And at the moment, I've not had a lot of feedback on it, but it's there, and so I think if members read that, you'll be able to find the longer term links in. Now, I agree, members may, and I did make this point earlier, members may prefer the current process, whereby members can effectively observe what happens during a public consultation process, albeit one that's shorter, only 8 weeks, and then put their amendments in. No, I'm not asking members to do it concurrently, and that's why we've allowed a longer period. But of course, there is the second bite of the cherry after the inspector's report, where I'm proposing that amendments can be brought, and obviously the intention is to relate those amendments to things that have already been put forward, matters considered by the inspector, and the opinions and the content of the inspector's report. And of course, this time the other gain is that all members' amendment now will be subjected to the public inquiry process, where previously they were not. And I think that's an important situation, because in the past there has been a risk that a last minute amendment can be made, which is very material and has not been subject to an inspector's independent review. Now, of course, that gap or risk has been reduced, and of course it does mean the inquiry will be bigger, more complicated. That's why we've had to talk about 2 or 3 inspectors, and therefore it's put everybody on their mettle in terms of the resources that we put into that. But I have to say, we've got some good response, and we've got a good team there, and I really believe that is all very doable. So I think I'm trying to see what I think I've picked up the points that the Connie Tarb raised, and again thank him for work, and I can assure him that the team will keep the scrutiny panel fully apprised on process issues, even though of course members of the panel may have substantive issues as we go through, but no different to any other members, which is absolutely right and proper that happens. But the process here will enable all that, I believe, to do the job that we hope of it. And I would ask, I hope with those comments, sir, is that I can propose the regulations in principle and ask for the appeal, sir.
Thank you very much, Deputy. I ask the Deputy to place a vote into the chat. The vote is on the principles of the regulations, and I open the voting and ask members to vote. Members have had the opportunity of casting their votes. And I ask the referee to close the voting. The principles have been adopted, 41 votes pour, 1 vote contre, no abstention in the link, and a further 3 votes pour in the chat.
We have the one, sir.
Yes, the 1 vote is asked for.
Deputy Tadia voted contre.
And I assume from what you said, Connétable St-Brelade, that your panel doesn't wish to scrutinise the matter again?
That's correct, sir.
We are 10 minutes before we need to consider the adjournment. How do you wish to deal with the matter in second reading, Minister?
Well, sir, I think there is an amendment on Regulation 2. So I think probably I don't know if I can ask for regulations. Actually, the main material is Regulation 2. I think 1 and 3 and then Amendment 2. So I have to do.
Well, what we could do is that's your amendment, isn't it, Minister?
Yes, sir. I'm asking.
And so you'd ask to be taken as amended. Members agree that the regulations may be taken as amended as to the amendment to Regulation 2. If anyone does that, in the chat. Very well, I'll take that as effectively an agreement on a standing vote. So, Minister, you can propose all 3 regulations in any way you wish.
So I'd very much like to oppose the regulations en bloc, sir. They do look, I'm afraid, complicated, but I think they boil down to the, the simple summation that I gave in my when I was proposing the proposition. That we've gone to great lengths, and I'm grateful for my colleagues, Deputy Guida and Deputy Pershard, and indeed Deputy Morell, who has been involved in a dialogue about getting these lodging periods as correct, and the greffia, sir. So I really think we've got a best we can achieve, sir. So in that case, I propose the regulations on block.
Very well. Are the regulations seconded for second reading?
Yes, sir.
Does any member wish to speak on the regulations or any of them in second reading? If no member wishes to speak in second reading, then I close the debate and ask the greffier to place a vote into the link, the voting link into the chat. And I open the voting and ask members to vote in second reading. Members had the opportunity of casting their votes. Ask the greffier to close the voting. The regulations have been adopted in second reading. 43 votes pour, no votes contre, no abstentions, and 1 in the link and 1 in the chat. How do you wish to deal with the matter in third reading, Minister?
Thank you, sir. In proposing the third reading, I'd like to thank members for making my task easily so far, and I hope we can finally give these the seal of approval today, because I mean, I think I've had to, as it were, very much summarise, but I have to say the work that's gone into these by all of the officers concerned on these details, because it is a complicated matter in law. But sir, I think there's no question this achieves, and the safeguards are all there, sir. And it is an ambitious plan, the island plan. As I say, frankly, I feel very excited. I am an optimist, and from work I've seen already, the members have seen some, the consultations that have all taken place with members on parish matters or on housing and so on, been very, very high quality, and the team have got a lot of information together. So, sir, I'd like to, again, in thanking my team, thanking the Greffier and the law officers, I would like to ask the estates, please, to support this in third reading, sir. So thank you. I make that proposal.
Well, does anyone, are the regulations seconded for third reading?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
Well, Conetarbs and Brillard.
Thank you, sir. I would likewise like to thank the Minister and his team for their openness with the panel in the drafting of this bridging island plan in a very short time frame. My thanks also go to the scrutiny officers and the GREF for producing an analysis of the process in our report, and I'm well aware of their late night working to achieve this in the limited time available. Thank you, sir.
Thank you very much. Does any other member wish to speak in third reading? No other member wishes to speak in third reading? Then I close the debate and call upon the Minister to respond.
Thank you, sir. I'd like to echo the Conetarbs comments, because this has been an enormous teamwork project so far, and it's paying dividends, and I feel very confident that with that support, and particularly the way members have responded today, I thank members. I think that if you like, the portents for a really good plan and process are really positive, sir. Thank you. Ask for the appel, please.
Thank you very much. If it is called for, I'll ask Greffier to post a link before voting into the chat. And I open the voting and ask members to vote.
So it's the Constable of St Lawrence here. Yes. Sorry to speak, sir, but my chat has disappeared completely. So I'd like to record my vote being poor, please.
Very well.
Thank you, sir.
As your chat has disappeared, that's fine. Hopefully we can fix it after the lunch and adjournment. How many? Members have had the opportunity of casting their votes. I ask the Greffier to close the voting. The regulations have been adopted in third reading, 41 votes pour, no votes contre, no abstentions in the link, and a further 4 votes indicating pour outside of the link. Is the adjournment proposed?
I propose the adjournment, please, sir.
Very well. The Assembly stands adjourned until 2:15.